Hey guys, tonight we're taking a long, slow walk into the shadows of ancient Rome. Not the marble columns and stern senatorial debates you're used to, but something deeper, wilder, and yes, probably illegal. Imagine you're in the vineyards outside the city, dusk settling in like warm silk across your shoulders. There's music in the distance, low and strange, and a smell in the air that's not just grapes. It's the kind of scent that makes your pulse stutter. You're not supposed to be here, and if you're caught, you probably won't survive this. But hey, what's life without a little danger? So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know down in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. Are we doing this in the dead of night, or did you start your bedtime scroll a little early tonight? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It starts with a whisper. You hear it from someone at the baths, or maybe over bread and olives at the market. Someone drops the word Bacchanalia like a pebble into calm water, and suddenly the air around you ripples. It's not a word most Romans say out loud anymore, not since the crackdown. But this isn't the kind of thing that stays buried. You feel its weight behind the speaker's casual tone. Their eyes flick around like someone might be listening. They might be. You press gently, just enough to see if it's real. And soon you hear more. About vineyards that host secret rites under full moons. About voices that sing in languages older than Latin. About women, so many women, dancing like no one's watching, even though they very much are. You catch the name again and again. Bacchus, god of wine, revelry, transformation, and something darker. It pulls at you like gravity. That name, that energy. Bacchus isn't some rustic god passed around cheap amphorae at harvest festivals. He's electric, ancient, and barely restrained. And the people who follow him? They're not just throwing parties. They're part of something you don't fully understand yet. One evening, walking home through the Subura, Rome's most chaotic and colourful district, you catch sight of a mural on a back wall, half scrubbed by the authorities. It shows a man with ivy in his hair and a grin too wide to be innocent. Around him, men and women twist in a tangle of limbs, wine cups tipped, mouths open mid-ecstasy or mid-scream. You can't tell. A painted faun peers out at you, eyes gleaming, half human, half goat. You swear it winks. Someone walks by and mutters, "They never really stopped. Not all of them, and now you're hooked." The idea won't leave your head. You think about the rhythm of Rome, the grain ships arriving, the gladiators fighting, the laws and the gods and the rituals. All of it so rigid, so performative. But this, the Bacchanalia, it's the opposite. It's messy, free, chaotic. It's seductive because it shouldn't exist in a world that worships order. One night, a friend leans in at dinner and says, "You want to see something wild?" You say yes before they finish. You follow them past the city walls, out to the countryside where the trees hang heavy with unpicked grapes, and the sky feels wider somehow. There's no clear path. You just move between thickets and vines until you hear music. Real this time. Not hallucination. Flutes and drums. Laughter too, the kind that makes your spine tingle. At the edge of a clearing, torchlight flickers against white robes and bare skin. Dozens of people, maybe more, are already there. No one looks surprised to see you. In fact, a tall woman with a crown of ivy walks straight up and presses a cup into your hands. She says nothing, just smiles. The wine tastes like smoke and honey. It hits you like truth. You sit and watch as the rites begin. There are no introductions, no schedules, just rhythm and movement and a rising energy you feel in your ribs. The woman in ivy begins to chant. Others follow. Some cry, some laugh like they've been set free from something unspeakable. Bodies move, swirl, collapse, lift again. You can't tell if it's a dance or a battle or a prayer. This is the Bacchanalia. And here's your first historical fact to cling to. These rites really did exist. Rooted in older Greek traditions, the Bacchanalia arrived in Rome sometime before 200 BCE. Initially small and secret, they eventually swelled in size and in notoriety, prompting the Roman Senate to pass the Senatus Consultum de Bacchanalibus in 186 BCE. A fancy way of saying, shut this madness down. But before that happened, it spread like wildfire. a sort of spiritual underground, promising transformation, freedom, and the kind of pleasure Rome's straight-laced temples could never offer. Your fringe fact for tonight. The Bacchic rites often included role reversal. Slaves wore fine robes, senators wore nothing, gender blurred, identities dissolved. It wasn't just about fun, it was about annihilating the self and becoming something else. And here's the scholarly debate that still rattles historians. Was this really a chaotic orgy cult as Roman sources claimed? Or was that just Senate propaganda, meant to demonize a spiritual movement that threatened their control? Some scholars argue the rituals were misrepresented. Others insist there really were dark rites, including human sacrifice, hidden behind the revelry. But right now, in this moment, in this clearing with music swelling and stars blinking overhead, none of that matters. What you feel isn't evil, it's free. You wake up with dirt in your hair and the taste of last night still clinging to your tongue. Wine, ash, sweat, and something older. Your robe is twisted halfway around your body, and your sandals are gone. The morning light is too bright, the birds too loud. You sit up, blinking against the sun, filtering through grapevines, and for a few moments you can't tell if it was a dream or something real. Then you hear it, soft humming, not far off. Someone else is still here, and the ritual, it's not over. You stumble to your feet and walk, limbs aching but somehow content toward the sound. You find a group seated in a circle, heads bowed. They're humming, yes, but not a tune you know. Their voices overlap in strange harmonies that sound like wind moving through ruins. At the centre is a statue of Bacchus carved from dark olive wood, life-sized and lean, with wild curls and a look in his eyes that says he knows things about you even you don't. He holds a bunch of grapes in one hand and a broken spear in the other. It's not the usual depiction. This Bacchus looks dangerous. Someone takes your hand and pulls you into the circle. You don't know them. It doesn't matter. Names don't mean much here. You sit and the circle breathes around you. One entity, many bodies. They're chanting now, but it's not Latin, not Greek either. It feels older, like it was never written down. You don't understand the words, but your skin rises in gooseflesh like your body understands even if your mind can't catch up. You've stumbled into something ancient, something sacred, and for the first time in your very Roman life, you don't feel watched or judged or required to play a role. Here, in the cult of Bacchus, no one cares about your name, your birth, your social rank. All they care about is that you showed up, that you let go, that you allowed yourself to be unravelled. The woman with the ivy crown speaks. We welcome the stranger as ourselves. The vine takes all who yield to it. Her voice is melodic, a little hoarse from chanting all night. She meets your eyes like she's reading the thoughts behind them. You don't flinch, but it's close. And here's where you learn your historical fact for the night. The cult wasn't originally Roman. It came from southern Italy, likely Campania, and before that, it was borrowed and reshaped from the Greek Dionysian mysteries. In Greece, the god was Dionysus. In Rome, he became Bacchus. But the rituals kept their Greek flavour. Secrecy, ecstasy, wine, transformation, and the blurring of human boundaries. Your fringe fact. Some of the original Bacchic rites were performed only by women. Men weren't allowed. In fact, early versions of the cult were heavily matriarchal, possibly connected to older fertility religions. These weren't just drinking parties. They were spiritual acts of release and revolt, sometimes led by women who had no other access to power. That's one reason the Roman elite found them so terrifying. You're not sure how long you stay seated staring into the eyes of that wooden god. Time isn't linear here. Hours might pass, or only minutes. When you finally rise, you feel light, almost unanchored, like your soul might slip free if you exhale too fast. Someone ties a cord around your wrist, made from grapevine. Now you carry him with you, they say softly. You've tasted him. He remembers. As you walk back through the vineyards, the sunlight is warmer, the grass softer under your feet. Even the air feels heavier with meaning. Rome still looms ahead. Laws, roads, schedules, expectations. But now you know this other world exists. Just a short walk from the marble facades and senatorial power. A world that operates on rhythm and surrender. That night, back in your insula, you wash your face in a cracked basin and avoid your reflection. It feels like looking at someone else's eyes. The cord is still on your wrist. You don't remove it. The next days blur. You return to work, to market chatter, to nodding at neighbours in polite Roman silence. But you feel the shift in yourself. Like there's another version of you moving just beneath the surface. Slower, looser, hungrier. The kind that smiles at nothing and remembers the way firelight glinted off bare skin and wet grape leaves. One evening, you find yourself at a tavern, sipping a cup of spiced wine that suddenly tastes unbearably tame. Someone at the next table mentions the Bacchant, those people. They roll their eyes and mutter about degeneracy and treason. You keep your face neutral, your cord hidden beneath your sleeve. Later, when you walk home alone, you feel it again. The pull, a vibration under your skin. You remember the drums, not just their sound, but the way they made your ribs tremble like tuning forks. You close your eyes, and they're still beating, faint but steady, like a distant heartbeat calling you back. This is what they don't tell you. The cult of Bacchus isn't just a festival, it's a transformation. You don't join it, it seeps into you. Once you've been there, you carry it everywhere. Historians have argued over how the cult spread so fast. Some say it was the intoxicating mix of pleasure and liberation. Others think it filled a spiritual gap, a craving the traditional Roman religion couldn't satisfy. Rome was big on discipline, hierarchy and public virtue. The Bacchanalia offered the exact opposite: wildness, anonymity and private ecstasy. And then there's the question that never quite goes away. Was it just fun? Or was something bigger happening in those midnight rites? Were they releasing repressed citizens from societal pressure? Or were they genuinely channeling a divine force? You don't know. All you know is that you've seen things now, felt things you can't explain. And next month, under the next full moon, when the drums start up again far beyond the city's edge, you'll go back. Of course you will. It starts differently this time. You don't even wait for an invitation. You already know the path through the shadowed alleys near the Forum, past the broken fountain where the dogs sleep, out along the Appian Way until the torchlight fades and the hills swallow the noise of the city. The vines are thick this time of year, ripe and ready. You pluck one as you walk, pop a grape into your mouth, and it bursts like a tiny secret. That same electric thrill tingles down your spine. You're not nervous anymore, you're hungry. There's new energy tonight. You feel it before you reach the grove. The drumming is faster, urgent, the flutes sharper, rising and falling like waves in a storm. And the people, there are more than before. Dozens, maybe hundreds. The grove stretches deeper than you realised, paths winding through trees that seem to bend inward like they're watching. Everyone wears masks this time, elaborate ones, horned satyrs, leering nymphs, wide-eyed owls, snarling wolves. Yours is pressed into your hand as you enter, a smooth wooden fox with slits for eyes and a knowing smirk. You tie it on without hesitation, and just like that, you're no longer yourself. You're not a Roman, not a citizen, not someone who must obey. You're something else. The ritual begins with fire. Small braziers light up across the grove, casting orange halos into the trees. The masked figures dance between them in twisting, hypnotic spirals. You join, your feet moving before your mind can catch up. There's a rhythm here, a code written in drum beats and breath, and once you find it, you can't stop. You dance until you forget your name. You dance until your mask feels more honest than your face. Then comes the madness. One moment, you're spinning beside a woman in a dough mask. The next, she's tearing her robe open and letting someone draw symbols on her skin in red wine and ash. A man stumbles past with flowers tangled in his beard, laughing like a mad poet. Two dancers fall to the ground, writhing in perfect synchronicity like their souls are stitched together. The air is thick with smoke and heat and something wilder than lust. You drink from any cup that's offered. The wine is stronger tonight, spiced with something herbal and strange. It makes your vision shimmer, edges blurring into light. You see trails behind moving bodies. You see eyes glowing like coals. Someone howls and it echoes through your bones. This is more than a party. It's a storm of transformation. Your historical fact tonight is this. The Bacchanalia often involved trance-like states. Participants claimed to be possessed by Bacchus himself, experiencing visions and performing acts they didn't remember later. Some modern scholars compare it to shamanic rituals, intense, altered states of consciousness induced by music, dance and psychoactive substances. Not just wine, Something else brewed in those ceremonial cups. Your fringe fact: at the height of the Bacchanalia's popularity, initiates were said to speak in tongues or channel animal spirits. Witnesses claimed to have seen men crawling like wolves or women climbing trees like cats. Were they faking it? Or was something more primal taking over? The debate is ongoing. Some historians argue the accounts were exaggerated by Roman officials eager to justify the crackdown. Others believe the rites genuinely tapped into something, whether divine, psychological or chemical, far outside Rome's rigid worldview. One fringe theory even suggests the cult preserved pre-Roman shamanic practices buried beneath centuries of conquest and conformity. Back in the grove, you feel the pulse rise. The chanting grows chaotic. The masked dancers begin to clash like waves crashing against each other, embracing, crying, collapsing, howling. It's not violence, not exactly, but it's raw, honest. Some fall to their knees, hands lifted. Others tear at their masks and scream like they're birthing their true selves. Then the high priest appears, if that's what you can call him. He wears a lion's pelt and carries a thyrsus, a tall staff crowned with a pine cone dripping with ivy and ribbons. His mask is gold and faceless, smooth and unreadable. When he raises the staff, the grove falls silent. Even the wind seems to hold its breath. He speaks in a voice like stone cracking in fire. Not Latin, not Greek, just raw sound. The syllables crawl over your skin. You understand nothing, and yet you feel everything. He reaches into a bowl and pulls out a snake. A real one, black, gleaming, coiling around his arm like it knows the way. He lifts it toward the stars. The crowd murmurs. Some cheer, others shudder. You're one of the ones who shudders. This is your scholarly debate for the night. Did the Bacchanalia involve real animal sacrifice, or just the threat of it? Roman writers accused the cult of practicing blood rites, even human sacrifice. But archaeological evidence is scarce. Some scholars believe the sacrifices were symbolic, ritual deaths, mock offerings. Others think the Romans exaggerated to fuel public outrage. After all, nothing scares an empire more than the idea of sacred, secret blood spilled beyond their control. The snake is not killed. It's released into the trees, vanishing like smoke. The high priest drops his staff and the drumming starts again, faster, louder, feverish. The madness returns. Someone grabs your hand. You run. You don't know where you're going, but it doesn't matter. You feel alive in a way that terrifies you. The night doesn't end, it just dissolves. When the sky begins to pale and the stars retreat, you're lying in grass, half covered by another person's cloak. You don't remember when they joined you or when they left. Your mask lies beside you, grinning with wood-carved satisfaction. You pick it up, brush off the dew and tuck it into your satchel. You don't want anyone to see it, but you'll never throw it away. As you walk home, you realize something strange. You didn't just attend a ritual, you passed through a door, and you're not entirely sure you came back through the same one. You're changing, whether that's sacred or dangerous, or both, you can't say. You can't stop thinking about him. Bacchus, Dionysus, Liber, whatever name he wants to wear on any given night. He's not like the other gods of Rome. Jupiter demands order. Mars thrives on blood. Minerva wants plans and discipline. But Bacchus? He wants your surrender, your joy, your frenzy. He wants you to break open like a pomegranate and spill your secrets under the stars. And you do. Again and again. You find yourself returning to the grove more often now. Not just on the full moon, but whenever you can slip away without raising suspicion. You know the path by heart. The crooked tree with the twisted bark. The rock that looks like a lion's head. The bend in the trail where the wind always picks up just so. It's not just a place. It's a different version of the world. One where masks are more honest than faces. Where every vine-shaded clearing hums with possibility. The rituals are never the same twice. Sometimes they're quiet. Handful of devotees kneeling around a basin of wine, eyes closed, whispering prayers that sound more like moans. Sometimes they're chaotic, a blur of bodies, flames, and pounding feet. You learn to let go, to drop your name at the edge of the grove like a pair of muddy sandals. One night you meet him, or something like him. He's not wearing a mask, which is unusual. His hair is long and wild, tangled with vine leaves. His skin gleams like he's been sweating for hours, and his eyes, His eyes don't belong to any mortal. They're too bright, too gold. He doesn't speak. He just watches you from across the fire, head tilted slightly, as if he knows what you'll do before you do it. You approach. Of course you do. He doesn't move, just smiles. Slow, indulgent. You can't explain why your knees go soft. It's not lust, not exactly. It's awe. You feel like a prey animal realizing the forest has eyes. You reach for him, and in that moment the drums fall away. Everything goes quiet. He leans in, brushes your cheek with his fingers. His touch is warm, alive, and then he's gone. Just gone. You stagger back, suddenly dizzy. The fire blurs and your breath sticks in your throat. A woman next to you nods slowly, like she saw it too. He comes sometimes, she murmurs, when he wants to. Your historical fact, Bacchus, like his Greek counterpart Dionysus, wasn't just a god of wine. He was also a god of epiphany. His followers believed he could appear among them at any moment, disguised as a mortal or animal, or nothing at all. He was the god who arrives when your guard is down, the one who pulls back the curtain and reveals what you didn't know you needed to see. Tonight's fringe fact. In some regions, initiates swore they'd seen Bacchus manifest as a beautiful youth, or as a serpent, a bull, even a leopard. These weren't metaphors, they meant it literally. The line between god and hallucination blurred in the fog of ecstasy and ritual. Wine, one tale from Campania, insists that a woman bore a child fathered by the god during one of the rites, though nobody could agree what the child actually was. There's debate, of course. Scholars argue whether these epiphanies were divine encounters, mass hysteria, or the effects of certain plant-based infusions snuck into the wine. Some modern theories suggest the presence of psychoactive herbs like henbane or belladonna in Bacchic ceremonies, compounds known to induce vivid visions and altered states. Others dismiss those claims entirely, pointing out that the Romans loved to exaggerate when it suited them. But standing there, with your skin still tingling where the not-quite-man touched you, it doesn't feel like exaggeration. It feels like revelation. You leave the grove long after the fires die down, long after most of the others have collapsed into sleep or song or sobbing. You walk back through the vineyards barefoot, vines brushing your ankles, dew soaking your toes, the sky's lightening, and you wonder how many sunrises you've seen this way, coming down from ecstasy, trying to reassemble yourself into something vaguely Roman. By the time you reach the city gates, the world has hardened again. The air smells of bread ovens and sewage. The carts rattle down the streets. You pass a priest of Jupiter and lower your gaze. He nods, unaware that you spent the night in the arms, possibly literal, of a god the Senate fears so deeply they've started sniffing around again. There are rumours now, whispers that the Bacchanalia is spreading, too far, too fast, that slaves are escaping their masters under cover of night, that women are defying their husbands to worship in the woods, that senators' sons are being lured into strange rituals and never coming back the same. And it's all true. Maybe not in the way they think, but it's true. You've felt the pull. You've felt what it's like to let go of your status, your rules, your skin. You've seen men weep and beg to be broken open. You've seen women chant until their voices turn to growls, calling down something primal and unholy and beautiful. The city is cracking, whether it knows it or not. One night, you return to the grove and find it different, bigger, wilder. A new structure has been added, a low circular stone stage surrounded by carved pillars, each etched with faces in various states of ecstasy and terror. It's like a small temple, but wrong somehow. Too intimate, too raw. It wasn't here before, and no one seems to know who built it. You ask a familiar priestess, an older woman with wild silver curls and eyes like burning coals. She just smiles. The god builds what he wants, when he wants. She takes your hand and leads you inside. The air feels heavier here. The silence is thick, expectant. You kneel. You don't know why. You just do. Outside, the drums begin again. The circular chamber is carved right into the hillside, hidden from anyone who doesn't already know it's there. From the outside, it looks like just another ruin in the woods, maybe an old wine cellar, abandoned and overgrown. But once you're inside, it's clear this place is alive. Not with people, though yes, they're gathering, but with energy. The kind that curls up your spine and sits behind your ears, whispering nonsense that makes perfect sense if you stop trying to explain it. The walls are covered in faded frescoes, some ancient, some fresh. They tell stories that don't line up in any kind of logical way. A woman giving birth to a star, a man turning into a tree mid-scream, a beast with too many eyes drinking from a silver bowl. There are no names, no explanations, just images, layered and pulsing in the flickering torchlight. You step closer and realise some of the paint is still wet. A younger initiate stands beside you, wearing a deer mask pushed back on her head like a crown. Her voice is quiet but certain. The god makes us paint what we see. Sometimes we don't remember doing it. You nod like you understand, because what else can you do? At the centre of the room is a sunken pit lined with stone benches. It smells of damp earth and smoke, and something faintly metallic. Blood, maybe. A tall figure stands near the edge, pouring a dark liquid into a wide bowl. You watch as the bowl overflows and the liquid drips down through tiny holes in the stone floor. It disappears beneath your feet, feeding something you can't see. You sit. No one speaks, but the room starts to hum, low and deep, like the inside of a wine barrel just before it cracks. The priestess from before walks a slow circle around the chamber, her staff tapping gently with each step. She says one word, just one, enter. And that's when it begins. They bring forward a man, naked, shaking, but not afraid. Not really. His eyes are wild, shining. He climbs into the centre pit and raises his arms like he's welcoming lightning. Two others step in beside him, masked and silent. They begin to move around him, slow and spiralling. One chants. The other sprinkles ashes across his shoulders. The ashes stick to his sweat like shadowy armour. You're witnessing a ritual of rebirth. At least that's what someone whispers near your ear. You can't see their face. You're not sure they were ever actually there. The man screams, not in pain but something else. Relief, terror, release. His body shakes, and then he drops to the floor, curling into himself like an infant. The masked attendants back away, and the room holds its breath. Minutes pass, maybe hours. Then the man rises, eyes glassy, body slack like a puppet whose strings were just tied back on. He walks up the stone steps without looking at anyone. Someone hands him a robe. He doesn't put it on. He walks out into the dark and no one follows. Your historical fact tonight. Underground sanctuaries like this were real. Some were discovered in Italy, built into natural caves, or dug beneath temples. These subterranean chambers were often used for mystery rites, rituals involving wine, chanting, purification, and intense emotional or spiritual experiences that few ever spoke about afterward. Scholars believe they were designed to mimic the underworld or the womb, places of death and rebirth, where you entered one thing and came out something else. Tonight's fringe fact. In some stories, initiates emerged from these chambers claiming they had died. Not metaphorically, literally. They described seeing otherworldly figures, hearing voices that didn't belong to the living, or watching their own body from above as if they'd stepped outside of it. Some never spoke again. Others became revered as prophets, touched by Bacchus and forever changed. And here's where the scholarly argument spirals. What exactly happened in these rites? Were they using drugs? Induced seizures? Was it suggestion, performance, or genuine mysticism? Ancient sources are contradictory and often second-hand. Some Roman historians dismissed the whole thing as dangerous nonsense. Others feared it so much they refused to write it down. But the people who went through it, they didn't argue, they just changed. Back in the chamber, the ceremony continues. Another initiate steps forward, and another, each one different. Some young, some old, some trembling, others laughing. You don't go up, not yet. But your pulse thrums every time the priestess walks by you. You feel it building, like pressure behind your eyes, like your skin is too tight and something inside is trying to get out. You want to be unravelled. Later, after the torches burn low and the floor is sticky with spilled wine and tears and things better left unexamined, the priestess turns to you. Next moon, she says, it's your turn, and you nod. Because of course it is. You leave the sanctuary with the others, blinking into the cold night air. The grove is quiet now, the trees still. The sky above is clear. Too clear. The stars look like they're watching, judging, or maybe just waiting to see what you'll become. You walk back through the vines, each step heavy with knowing you're not the same. You haven't been for weeks, but after the next moon, you really won't be. You'll be something else. And here's the thing you're starting to understand. The Bacchanalia isn't just about celebration. It's not just wine and dancing and moaning in the dark. It's a machine, a spiritual forge. It strips away what Rome built around you, law, identity, shame, and reveals what's underneath. Sometimes that's beautiful, sometimes it's monstrous, but it's always true. You try not to count the days until the next full moon, but it's impossible. Your body keeps track even if your mind pretends not to. You feel it in your sleep. Restless dreams full of flickering torches and blood-red wine, laughter turning to howling, arms reaching for you through vines that slither, like snakes. You wake up gasping, mouth dry, hands shaking like you've already been through the rite and just forgot it. You go through the motions of daily Roman life. You nod politely to your neighbours, haggle over fish in the market, keep your tunic clean and your voice quiet. But under it all, you know what's coming, and worse, you want it. When the night finally comes, it's cloudy. No stars. The moon is veiled like a bride. You head to the grove anyway, your feet finding the path almost unconsciously. The air is thick and heavy, not quite stormy but close. It smells like wet dirt and overripe fruit, like everything is about to burst. You're not the only one feeling it. The grove is already packed when you arrive, bodies moving in slow, deliberate patterns like pieces in a dance you don't yet understand. The air is warmer here, pulsing. You spot the priestess waiting at the edge of the circular temple. She gives you a nod, slow and certain. You're ready, she says. You're not, but that doesn't matter. She leads you inside, the same chamber, but tonight it feels like a heartbeat. The walls seem to breathe. There's already someone in the pit, an initiate mid-transformation, moaning softly while masked attendants anoint him with oil and herbs. You sit where you did last time, but this time everything is sharper. You can feel the texture of the stone under your fingers. You can hear the breath of the person beside you. The wine in the bowl smells stronger, almost metallic. Maybe it's not just wine anymore. The priestess raises her staff. Who comes for unmaking? You stand. Your voice surprises you. I do. The moment you step into the centre pit, the room drops away. Not literally, but your sense of it shifts. You're no longer watching. You're inside something vast and sacred and very, very old. Two masked figures flank you, one in a lion mask, one in a crow. They begin to move around you, drawing symbols on your chest with their fingers dipped in ash and honey. The lines sting, then cool. One chants in a low voice, repeating your name, not your Roman name, but something deeper, the one you forgot until just now. You tremble, not from fear, but from recognition. The priestess steps into the circle. Her eyes are wide, but not warm. She's not here to comfort you. She's here to dismantle you. You will die, she says, and be reborn. Then they pour the wine. It's not gentle. It hits your mouth hard, thick and bitter, sweet and sharp all at once. You try to swallow, but more comes, and more. You cough. It spills down your chin, over your chest, soaking your tunic and burning your nostrils. You feel drunk instantly, but not in the way you know. This isn't the sloppy, friendly tavern buzz. This is something deeper, older. You feel it crawl through your veins like fireflies, and then you start to see. The frescoes on the walls move. The figures twist and writhe. One of them turns to look directly at you. You blink and it's back to paint, but the feeling lingers. You fall to your knees. The room is spinning. The priestess touches your forehead and whispers, "Let go." And you do. You let go of your name, your history, your Roman decorum. You let go of the fear that has shaped your life. You let go of your father's voice in your head, the rules carved into stone, the streets laid out in perfect grid. You scream, not because you want to, but because something in you needs to. The room responds, the chanting rises, the drums return, and the others, the ones who've already passed through this, begin to howl, not out of pain, but recognition. They remember what you're feeling. They know what it's like to burn down. Someone pours oil over your back, another binds your wrists loosely with vines. You lie down, face to the stone, and the earth feels warm beneath you. You think you might cry, but instead you laugh. It bubbles out of you like wine from an overfilled cup. Your historical fact. The Bacchic initiations were often described by outsiders as ritual madness. Ancient authors reported that initiates would lose themselves entirely, speaking in tongues, writhing, laughing, weeping, even collapsing. To the Romans, this looked like insanity, but to the participants, it was transcendence. They weren't losing their minds. They were shedding them. Your fringe fact. In some rare accounts, initiates claimed they had seen their future during the rites. One man from Lucania reported returning from a Bacchic initiation with detailed knowledge of his own death, down to the colour of the tunic he'd wear. Years later, it happened exactly as he'd described. Coincidence? Oracle power? Or just a mind so cracked open that time itself leaked in? And the debate, as always, is tangled. Some historians believe these ceremonies offered psychological liberation, a way to process trauma, to reject oppressive systems. Others argue they were just theatre, elaborate illusions for the emotionally starved. And then there are those who think the Bacchic rites truly connected people to something divine. Not metaphorically, but literally. A god who entered his followers, not through sermons, but through surrender. You don't know where you fall on that spectrum. All you know is that you're on the ground, sobbing and smiling, with your body humming like a struck bell. You feel like you've died, and somehow you're still here. The priestess kneels beside you, places her hand on your chest and says the final word, "Rise." You do. No robe, no mask, just yourself, your real self. The others cheer, not loudly, but with reverence. You're not the same. They see it. You feel it. You step out of the circle. The grove waits, quiet and dark and alive. The god is watching, and he approves. The morning after your rebirth is unsettling, not because you feel wrong, but because you don't feel anything in the usual way. The sun rises, like it always does, spilling light over tiled roofs and crumbling statues. Rome breathes and grumbles and goes about its routines. But to you, everything feels like a stage play you forgot your lines for. You pass familiar shops and faces and they blur, like background characters in a dream you're half awake in. You're quiet for days, not because you have nothing to say, but because your mouth doesn't feel like yours anymore. Words seem so flat, like trying to describe colour to someone who's never seen light. Your hands twitch for the rhythm of the grove. Your ears strain for drums that aren't there. You find yourself holding your breath, not in fear but in expectation, like the ritual isn't really over, just paused. And then there's the strange part. The people you meet seem to notice something different in you. Not everyone, just a few. A merchant's daughter touches your wrist in the forum and says, "You smell like wine and fire." A baker eyes you and asks, "Been out past the city again?" Not accusatory, just curious, as if they know, as if they're part of it too. You begin to notice them, the others, the ones who have that look, wild eyes, vine bracelets hidden under sleeves, a stillness in their posture that vibrates beneath the surface. They don't speak of it, not out loud, but when you pass them, you both nod. That's all. It's enough. You're part of something now, a network, a hidden pulse running beneath Rome's polished bones. One evening you find yourself back at the grove, not for a ritual, not for a ceremony, just drawn. The moon is only a sliver, but it feels right. The place is quieter without the music, but it still breathes. The vines curl a little closer as you pass. You touch one and swear it twitches in your hand. At the edge of the clearing you see a small fire. 2 people sit beside it. Strangers, at first glance. Then one looks up and smiles. "You came back," she says, like it was inevitable. You sit. The flames crackle. Someone passes a jug of wine. No ceremony, no initiation, just a quiet communion of those who've been touched. You don't know their names. You don't need to. That's the strange beauty of it. In the grove, strangers become sacred. It's not about friendship. Not exactly. It's not about romance either, though sometimes it wears that face. It's about recognition, soul to soul. You see something in them that mirrors what broke open in you. It doesn't matter if you speak. It doesn't matter if you even touch. The connection is electric, ancient, and terrifyingly deep. Tonight's historical fact. One of the defining features of Bacchic worship was the abandonment of social status. In the grove, senators danced beside slaves, matrons beside prostitutes. There were no titles, no property, no superiority. Everyone belonged equally to Bacchus. This was radical in Roman society, which was obsessed with hierarchy and control. It's part of what made the cult so dangerous in the eyes of the state. Your fringe fact. In some regions, it was believed that touching another person during the Bacchanalia could bind your fates together. For a day, a year, or even lifetimes. No contracts, no oaths, just skin against skin beneath the moonlight. Some took it seriously, others feared it. There are stories of people avoiding the grove for years because of one accidental touch that haunted them. The scholarly debate, whether these connections were purely emotional, born from ritual intensity and sensory overload, or if the Bacchic rites deliberately engineered them. Was it chemistry, psychology, or magic? Did Bacchus awaken something primal in the human brain, or simply offer a space where it could finally breathe? You lean back and watch the fire. The woman beside you hums a low melody you half remember from your own initiation. Her head rests lightly against your shoulder, not in romance, but in trust. The man across the flames is sketching something in the dirt. Circles within circles, shapes that move when you blink. This isn't a festival. It isn't a religion. It's a transformation machine. It strips off the skin society gave you and shows you what lies underneath. Then it wraps that truth in vines and fire and says, "Go, live like this." You leave before dawn, not because anyone asks you to. You just know it's time. The woman presses a dried fig into your hand as a parting gift. It's warm, like it's been in her palm for hours. You eat it as you walk. Back in the city, you try to function. You really do. You work. You eat. You sleep. You nod when someone says your name, but your mind keeps drifting. Back to the fire. Back to the chants. Back to the way the priestess touched your forehead and said, "Rise," like it was a command from the god himself. One afternoon, you find a child drawing in the dust near the Temple of Ceres. You glance down and see the same symbol the man was sketching in the grove. Circles within circles, no beginning or end. You crouch and ask where she learned it. She shrugs and says, "It came to me in a dream." You leave a coin beside her, not because she's begging, because it feels right. That night you dream of him again. Bacchus. This time he's a stag, huge and silent, with vines coiled in his antlers and fire in his breath. He walks through your bedroom, pauses at your bed, and lowers his head until your foreheads touch. You wake with the taste of wine in your mouth and the smell of ivy in your hair. No one touches your soul like Bacchus does, and once they do, no part of you is untouched. There's a part of the Bacchanalia no one talks about. Not out loud anyway, not in daylight. It starts subtle. A change in the air, in how people touch each other, not just casually, not like friends or lovers, but like participants in something sacred. Every brush of a hand, every glance held just a bit too long, carries the weight of ritual. It's not about desire, or maybe it is, but it's also about transformation, about offering yourself up, about disappearing just for a while into someone else. You felt it. That moment when the line between you and another person starts to blur, when you're both masked, half naked, covered in wine and sweat and soft chant smoke, and you suddenly realize you don't care where you end and they begin. It's not debauchery. It's something else. Something that dissolves identity and builds communion in its place. Tonight, the rite is different. The grove is lit by dozens of tiny fires, each carefully spaced in a circle that feels like a trap or a spell, or both. The air hums with anticipation, thick with clove smoke and crushed thyme. Initiates walk between the flames, some in pairs, some alone, all in silence. You've never seen it this quiet. Even the flutes are hushed. Just the soft crackle of fire and the low thump of distant drums, barely audible, like a heartbeat heard underwater. You're guided to one of the inner rings, where the grass is cool and damp beneath your feet. A woman approaches. She's wearing a stag mask, chest bare, painted in streaks of dark red. You don't speak. You don't have to. She reaches out and touches your chest with her palm gently, right over your heart. Then your forehead. Then your lips. You do the same. Then you both kneel, side by side. Around you, other pairs do the same. The circle fills with bodies folding, leaning, bowing. It's a dance, but without motion. A stillness you feel vibrating in your bones. Then the priestess begins to chant, slow and rhythmic. The same phrase over and over in a language that doesn't belong to this century. Maybe not even this planet. It feels like it's being dug up from your own marrow. You lean forward until your forehead touches the woman's. Your breathing sinks, your eyes are closed, and still, somehow, you can see her. Not her face, not her mask, but what's underneath. Her hunger, her ache, her light. And then, somehow, you're not alone inside your own body. The sensation is difficult to explain, like you're in two places at once, inside your head and also inside hers. You feel her heartbeat in your own chest. You hear her thoughts like echoes. Your spine tingles with her memories, falling into a river as a child, biting her tongue during her first kiss, screaming into her pillow the night her brother was taken by soldiers. You're crying, and you don't know whose tears they are. This is the ecstasy of the Bacchanalia. Not just losing yourself, but finding someone else inside you. Not through conversation, not through time, but through ritual, through sacrifice. You gave your name to the fire and received her soul in return. The priestess's chant swells. Around you, others are trembling. Some are sobbing, some are laughing. One pair is locked in a slow, swaying embrace that looks more like a trance than an act of love. You remember your historical fact. The Bacchic rites often included what the Romans described as symbolic death, a simulated passing of the soul from one body to another. This was not casual. It was considered a kind of divine marriage or sacred fusion. It wasn't always sexual, but it was always intimate, profound, world-changing, and it was central to the mystery. Your fringe fact, some early Christian mystics, centuries later, would echo this kind of ecstatic union in their own writings. St. Teresa described visions of being pierced by divine light and merging with Christ in ways that sound suspiciously familiar. Some scholars argue that those later mystical experiences were echoes, or even suppressed memories, of older Bacchic and Dionysian rites. And the open debate? Whether the merging of identities was psychological, theatrical, or something truly metaphysical. Were initiates hypnotized, drugged, or had they truly tapped into a collective consciousness, the deep river that flows beneath all our separate selves? Some believe the rites were rehearsed illusions. Others insist they accessed something real, something the rest of us forgot how to see. Back in the grove, the woman you're kneeling with places her forehead against yours once more, breath trembling. And for a second, a single electrifying second, you know her name. Not the one she uses in the city, but the secret one. The one even she doesn't remember until now. You whisper it. She gasps. And just like that, the spell breaks. You both fall back, panting, hands clutching the earth. The priestess lowers her arms. The chant fades. The fires die slowly, one by one. The rite is complete. There is no applause, no ceremony. The participants begin to rise, softly, quietly, offering hands to one another. Some embrace. Some walk alone into the trees. A few simply sit in silence, processing what they've just felt. What they've just become. You and the woman stand. You don't speak. You don't need to. But as you turn to leave, she presses her fingers to your shoulder, just for a moment. A benediction. A goodbye. A reminder. On the walk back, you feel hollowed and holy. Like something large and bright passed through you, and now you're just figuring out how to carry the echo. When you sleep, your dreams are a maze of shared memories. Not your own, but hers. You see through her eyes, hear her laughter in a courtyard you've never visited, smell her mother's perfume, lavender and sweat and bread. In the morning you cry again, but this time you know why. You've never been so full of another person before, and now that she's gone, the emptiness aches, in places you didn't even know had names. And that's the catch no one tells you about sacred intimacy. Once strangers become sacred, you're never really strangers again. When the Roman day resumes, with its bustle and grind and bread lines and bored senators droning about tax revisions, it's hard not to laugh. Really laugh. Not because anything's funny, but because everything feels absurd now. You stroll through the forum and hear a magistrate yelling about paving stones. Another man argues over the price of figs. A vendor shouts about his miracle cure for baldness. Meanwhile, your brain is still humming with sacred names and half-forgotten chants. Your shoulder still tingles where she touched you. And most surreal of all, no one can tell. That's the great secret, isn't it? You walk among them, face calm, tunic neat, but inside Inside, you're still kneeling in the dirt with another soul wound into your ribs. You've danced beneath stars while ivy twisted around your ankles. You've merged with a stranger until you didn't know which heartbeat was yours. And now you're expected to care about Senate gossip and whether the aqueducts are leaking again. It's hilarious, but also tragic. So you do what many others have done before you. What the women of the cult seem to understand better than anyone else. You carry it quietly. And when the itch becomes too strong, when the noise of Rome gets too sharp, you return to the grove. Sometimes alone, sometimes with others. You always find someone there. The god doesn't like to be alone, after all, and that's when you notice something. The women lead. Not just in ritual, though yes, the priestesses guide the chants, set the fire circles, choose the initiates. But more than that, they embody it. They carry the god differently. You see it in how they walk, how they laugh, how they meet your gaze like they already know your worst secrets and have forgiven them in advance. In the city, women are expected to be modest, silent, invisible. But in the grove, they are fire, they are frenzy, they scream when they want, they speak in tongues, they climb trees and pull down the moon with their bare hands, and people listen. One woman in particular becomes your unofficial guide. She calls herself Myrrhine, not her birth name, she says, but the name Bacchus gave her. She's older than you, with lines around her eyes that look like they were carved by laughter and grief both. Her hair is streaked with grey, and she wears it loose, like vines in a storm. She tells you, one night as you walk the grove's edge, he comes to us differently. To you, he whispers. To us, he roars. You ask her what she means. Myrrhine smiles, slow and a little sad. You men are always waiting for permission to break. We already live in pieces. He just gives us a reason. You walk for hours. She tells you how the cult offered her freedom long before Rome ever considered her a citizen. How she was married at 14 to a man who didn't speak to her unless he needed something. How she bled silently for years, raising sons who ignored her and daughters who feared her. And then, one night, she followed the sound of drums into the woods and was never the same. That was 20 years ago. Now she's one of the grove's flame keepers. She knows which herbs go into the wine. She knows which dances call the storm and which songs make the vines bloom out of season. She once guided a senator's wife through her first transformation, she says, and that woman now lives alone on the coast, painting the sea and refusing to answer letters from Rome. You don't question any of it, not because you believe every word, but because belief isn't the point. The story is the ritual. The ritual is the truth. Your historical fact. By the time the Roman Senate began investigating the Bacchanalia, women were at the heart of the movement. Livy, the ever-pious Roman historian, claimed that the cult was particularly dangerous because it gave women unsupervised freedom of movement, of speech, of pleasure. Some ceremonies were led entirely by women, some excluded men altogether. The Senate viewed this as a threat not only to religious order, but to the structure of Roman society itself. Fringe fact for tonight, certain Bacchic priestesses were rumoured to have prophetic powers, not the respectable kind. No reading sheep livers or interpreting lightning strikes. This was wild, direct prophecy, screaming truths in the middle of the forest, naming crimes before they happened, collapsing into fits that revealed secret affairs or unborn children or the location of missing bodies. Some were burned for it, others were hidden, protected, even bribed, and the debate? Whether the Bacchanalia gave women actual power, or just the illusion of it. Did the cult offer them real agency, or did it simply let them act wild for a night, only to return to silence the next morning? Some scholars argue that the rites were catharsis without consequence. Others say they were revolutionary, a quiet act of resistance woven into religious ecstasy. Myrrhine says none of that matters. He listens to us, she says, kneeling to tender fire. He lets us scream. And that alone is enough. You watch her stir the coals, her arms streaked with ash and wine. You realise that in Rome she'd be ignored. In the grove she's sacred. It shifts something in you. The next time you see her lead a ritual, it's like watching a storm take human shape. She moves between dancers, whispering, shouting, singing, and everything changes in her wake. People fall to their knees just from the sound of her voice. When she calls the god's name, even the wind responds. You start paying attention, not just to Myrrhine, but to the others like her. The older women with strong arms and ivy tattoos. The younger ones who move like they've done this for centuries. You stop assuming they're here for the same reasons you are. You start listening, and the more you listen, the more you realise the god speaks loudest through those Rome tries hardest to silence. One night, Mirren presses a vine bracelet into your hand. "You've begun," she says, "but don't think it ends there." You nod. Because now, finally you understand. Bacchus isn't just the god of wine, he's the god of unravelling, of breaking what binds you, and sometimes the person pulling the thread is a woman with fire in her eyes and a voice like thunder. You don't notice the shift in the air at first, not until the grove goes quiet, not until the flutes stop mid-note, as if someone suddenly cut the breath from them, not until you realise no one is dancing. It's not just silence, it's watching. That strange tension that rolls through a crowd when someone important walks into the room, or when a predator circles the edge of the firelight. You turn. There, at the edge of the clearing beneath the twisted fig tree stands a man in a senator's cloak. Clean, pressed, too perfect for this place. He doesn't belong. Everyone can feel it. Even the trees, you swear, have leaned slightly away from him. He says nothing at first, just looks around, mouth tight, nostrils flared like he's trying to smell sin. His guards stand behind him, just two, which is either arrogant or stupid. The priestess Myrrhine steps forward calmly, arms loose at her sides. She says nothing either. She doesn't need to. This is her temple, even if it has no roof. The senator clears his throat, his voice is careful, practiced. "There have been complaints," he says. No one answers. He seems to expect that. "We're not here to interfere with honest worship," he continues, a lie so thin it's practically translucent. "But questions have been raised about the size of your gatherings, about what's being taught here, about what's being done here." Still, no one speaks, so he presses harder. "There are rumours," he says, "of violence, of manipulation, of sedition." There it is, the word he wanted to say all along. Myrrhine's voice cuts through the quiet like silk over steel. "Who do you represent?" The man falters, but only for a second. "I represent the Senate, and the people of Rome." Soft laughter ripples through the grove. It's not mocking, not exactly. It's pitying. Everyone here knows the difference between a crowd and a people. Myrrhine steps closer. "The god does not bow to the Senate." "He will," the man replies too quickly, and just like that the line is drawn. Your historical fact tonight. In 1860 BCE, the Roman Senate issued one of its most sweeping religious decrees in history, the Senatus Consultum de Bacchanalibus. It outlawed the Bacchic rites across Italy, declaring that no private Bacchic meetings could take place without prior Senate approval, and even then only in groups of 5 or fewer, under strict conditions. Temples were destroyed, worshippers arrested, some were executed. The crackdown was massive, sudden, and merciless. Your fringe fact. According to Livy, over 7,000 people were named and implicated during the investigation. 7,000. Many of them never stood trial. They simply vanished. Whispers claimed some Baccanti fled underground, deeper, into the countryside. Others insisted they changed names, formed new cults, hid their god behind new masks. And the debate? Whether the crackdown was actually about religion or about control. Some historians argue that the Bacchic rites weren't the real threat. What frightened Rome was what the cult represented: cross-class unity, female authority, ecstatic liberation from state power. The rituals gave people freedom from Rome's most precious invention, order, and for that they had to be stopped. Back in the grove, Myrrhine doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't need to. "You misunderstand," she tells the senator. "We're not hiding in the woods because we're afraid. We're here because Rome's walls are too narrow for us." The man stiffens, his hands twitch. "These meetings are illegal." "And yet," Myrrhine says, gesturing to the circle, "here you are, listening." He turns to leave, but not before issuing a warning. "We are watching," he says. "You'd be wise to return to proper gods." Then he's gone. His guards vanish with him. The tension remains. The grove breathes again, but slower now, cautious. Later, you sit near one of the smaller fires, knees pulled to your chest. Myrrhine joins you, silent for a long while. "They'll come back," you say. She nods. "Yes, with chains next time." You ask her what you should do. "Whatever the god tells you," she replies. But know this, Rome is scared, and fear makes her stupid. The next morning you hear the first whispers in the city. Someone's sister has been taken in for questioning. A man's neighbour disappeared after the watch searched his house. A senator's younger son hasn't returned from his country estate, and there are rumours he joined a cult in the hills. And you realise it's begun. The crackdown isn't coming. It's here. The change in the grove is immediate. No more open dancing, no public chants. Everything goes quiet, efficient. Fires are kept low, masks are burned after use, no names are shared. If someone doesn't return one night, no one asks. No one speaks of it. But everyone notices. The priestesses begin training the younger initiates in secrecy, how to hide signs of the rite, how to slip through the city without being followed, how to bury sacred items or disguise them as household goods. You learn how to build a thyrsus staff that looks like a walking stick. You learn how to paint symbols in ash that vanish in sunlight. This is no longer just a cult. It's a resistance. Your days become sharp-edged. Every step in the city feels like it might be your last. You start to recognise the shadows, the same man lingering near your insula, the same glint of bronze at the marketplace. Someone is watching, but you still return. You always return. Because now, more than ever, it matters. You kneel in the dirt beside Marine and help her prepare wine that smells of smoke and lemon balm. You whisper to the trees. You listen for footsteps in the dark. The god doesn't speak anymore, not with thunder or dreams, but you feel him, closer, tighter, like he's holding his breath, waiting, because he knows too. The wild doesn't go quietly. The air in the grove is different now. Even when the moon is high and the flutes are calling, there's something sharper underneath. Not fear exactly, because fear is too small a word, but alertness, a tension in the back of your neck, like the trees themselves are waiting to snap shut. People arrive quieter, they leave quicker, they whisper more and dance less, but you stay. Of course you stay. You've seen what waits outside this place. Dusty streets, judges who pretend not to see, priests who call the gods by rote and never meet their own eyes. Rome is marble and mud and masks, but here, beneath the vines and ash and flickering firelight, there is something real. So you stay. And because you stay, you begin to see things others miss. You start to see the shape of the Bacchantes world. Not just what they do, but how they live. There's a rhythm to it, soft and strange and looping. The older women wake first, before dawn, walking barefoot in the cold grass, collecting dew in bowls and whispering to the trees. They stir herbs into wine with their fingers, never spoons. They bless the fire with 3 breaths, not 1. When they speak to the god, they don't kneel. They lean in like speaking to a lover. And you begin to realise this isn't chaos, this is structure. Just not the Roman kind. In Rome, power flows downward. Titles, offices, names chiselled in stone. In the Grove, power is circular. You don't earn it with money or politics. You become it, slowly, by surrendering. The more you give up, the more you're trusted. The more you stop pretending, the closer you get to the god. And the women? They've mastered it. You spend a week living among them, not because you're invited, but because you never leave. You sleep under trees, wrapped in someone's old robe, waking with your face pressed into moss. You help gather wood, stir pots, carry jugs of wine. You listen, you learn. One night, a girl no older than 16 takes her first cup. You recognise the look, half fear, half hunger. She drinks it all in one swallow, then stares into the flames as if they'll show her who she really is. She asks no questions. No one explains what's coming. That's not how it works. You sit beside her as the shadows climb the trees, as the chanting rises, and when her body begins to tremble, you catch her before she falls. She sobs in your arms like a child. She emerges in the morning silent and shining as if scraped clean. That's the real rite. Not what's done to you, but what you do for others. Your historical fact. Roman sources, especially Livy, claim the Bacchic cult was dominated by women who used the ceremonies to recruit new followers, particularly young people, both male and female. The Senate feared this above all, that citizens were being pulled away from Roman values by passion, ecstasy, and the whispers of disorderly women. In response, the authorities accused these women of corruption, poisonings, even murder. Some were executed without trial. Fringe fact? In several uncovered shrines in southern Italy, inscriptions have been found in which women refer to themselves not as priestesses, but as daughters of the god. No titles, no ranks, just lineage. Like Bacchus wasn't a being they worshipped, but a father they remembered, a lover they carried, a fire that lived in their blood. And the debate. Were these women true religious leaders, or simply scapegoats? Some scholars argue they held real power, operating as shamans or spiritual guides. Others believe they were convenient targets for the state, blamed for transgressions Rome couldn't explain. Still others suggest they were both, powerful and dangerous, and that's why the crackdown had to be so violent. Back in the Grove, Marine is quieter these days. She speaks only when necessary. You catch her once, staring into the trees for hours, lips moving in prayer or memory or both. One night she turns to you and says, "They're coming." Not a question, a prophecy. The next day the Grove empties early. No ritual, no drums. Everyone scatters like leaves in the wind. You stay behind with a few others, helping to bury the thyrsus staffs beneath the roots of an old olive tree. You crush symbols into dust with stones. You smear ash across painted frescoes until the figures disappear. You keep one mask, just one. That night, a fire flickers deep in the woods, not yours. You watch from the shadows as two men in military cloaks stomp through the clearing, swords drawn. They don't find what they're looking for. They curse. They spit. One of them urinates on the wine bowl. You clench your fists, but you don't move. This is what it means now, to be a bacchante, not just to dance, but to protect, to remember the god even when you cannot say his name. You carry the rituals in your body. You walk through Rome like nothing's changed, but in your pulse, in your breath, in the way you look at the sky, the god is alive. You see it in others too. A woman handing out olives in the market who hums an old chant between customers. A soldier's son who draws a spiral in chalk near a fountain and walks away without looking back. An old man who leaves grapes on a statue's foot. Not as an offering to Jupiter, but as a signal. We are still here. They can outlaw the rites, burn the masks, tear down the groves, but they can't unmake what has been made, and they cannot silence the rhythm. Even now, you feel it. Faint, low, constant. The drums haven't stopped. They've just gone underground. You wake with silk on your skin, but it's not real silk. It's linen, soft from too many washings, soaked the night before in wine and spiced oil. It smells like smoke and roses, and your head spins with dreams that may or may not have happened. You sit up slowly, the morning air cool against your bare chest, and realize you're not alone. Two others are still asleep nearby, tangled in blankets and each other's limbs, breathing softly like one great creature with many hearts. You can't remember how the night ended, but you know it began with a chant and ended with shedding skin. Emotional, physical, social, all of it. Last night was one of those nights. The kind where gender didn't exist. Or maybe it did, just differently. Fluid. Optional. Celebrated in its shifting, not fixed. You saw a man dance like a woman, his hips swaying like flame. You saw a woman climb a tree and howl like a wolf. Someone in gold robes let their beard grow wild while wearing pearls around their neck and nothing else. And it made sense. All of it made sense. Because Bacchus doesn't ask you to be yourself. He asks you to let go of what you think you are. He doesn't care about your birth name, your father's name, the god carved into your ring. He cares about the raw thing underneath, the spark that can't be tamed. That night, the ritual was designed to blur every line Rome ever carved. The fire circle was set wide, dancers forming its edges like a living wall. In the centre, transformation. You watched a boy strip off his soldier's tunic and don a robe of green silk, his face painted with streaks of crushed berries and ash. He moved like water. No, like wine. He laughed, cried, sang, shouted and collapsed, all in the span of an hour. He wasn't ridiculed, he was exalted, he was seen. Mirren led the rite, as always. She wore half a lion mask, a necklace made of polished bone, and nothing else. She spun slow circles with her arms outstretched, chanting in spirals, drawing the others into a trance. When she pointed to you, you didn't hesitate. You stepped into the firelight. Someone handed you a silk robe the colour of blood and sky. You put it on, you danced, and gods help you. You danced like someone else, or maybe the truest version of you. You dropped your name like a stone into water. You dropped your face, your voice, your posture. You wore someone new, not for disguise, but for exploration, and it wasn't performance. No one was watching for approval. Everyone was watching to witness. And when you locked eyes with someone across the fire, a person who looked like both man and woman and neither, you felt something twist in your chest. Not lust, not love. Something deeper, recognition. Your historical fact for tonight. The Bacchic rites often included gender bending and role reversal as core elements of ritual. Roman historians, especially the scandal-obsessed kind, reported that men dressed as women, women as men, and all hierarchy dissolved in the blur of identity. While some exaggerated these accounts for dramatic effect, archaeological evidence, including frescoes and ceremonial artifacts, supports the reality of ritual, cross-dressing and fluid gender roles in Bacchic worship. Fringe fact: in some fringe traditions, it was believed that Bacchus himself was intersexed or dual-formed, a god of shifting nature who could be man, woman or animal at will. Some worshippers even claimed that during possession, they felt their gender change, physically, viscerally, temporarily. These weren't metaphors. These were ecstatic truths, embodied in the dirt and firelight. And the debate? Whether these transformations were theatrical, psychological or mystical. Modern scholars wrestle with the accounts, some calling them evidence of sacred drag, others suggesting altered states of consciousness allowed for genuine dissociation from gender. A few daring voices argue the Bacchanalia was one of history's first safe spaces for gender nonconformity. The Romans feared it for a reason, after all. It gave people permission to be more than the empire allowed. Back in the grove, the fire has burned to embers. You rise, slow and aching, wrapping the wine-soaked linen tighter around you. The others are waking too, soft murmurs rising with the mist. The person you danced with last night, the one with the eyes like storm clouds, meets your gaze from across the ashes. You nod. They nod. Nothing needs to be said. You walk together to the spring just outside the grove, where water trickles cold and clean over flat stones. You wash, side by side, stripped of robe and name and role. You help each other scrub off the remnants of ash and oil. At one point, they lift your hand and trace a symbol into your palm, a spiral with a split at the top. New birth, they whisper. Not one, not two, something else. You smile, you understand, you feel it, in your bones. Later that day, back in the city, you spot a senator's son walking with purpose across the forum. But there's something in his posture that gives him away. Something softer, something truer. You know he was there. You nod as you pass. He doesn't return the nod, but his eyes flick toward you, and that's enough. Rome still thinks in binaries. Male and female, master and slave, citizen and foreigner, god and ban. The Bacchantes think in circles, loops, spirals, identities that expand and collapse like breath. Last night, you inhaled someone new. Today you're still exhaling. You wear your tunic differently, slightly looser. The same vine bracelet as always, now joined by a knotted cord in purple thread. A silent marker. Not flashy, not loud, but real. And the next time you catch your reflection in a polished basin, you pause. Not because you don't recognize yourself, but because you do. And for the first time, that reflection isn't bound to your Roman name, your family line, your government-issued category. It's you, and also not you, and also more. This is what the cult teaches. Not just how to drink and chant and vanish into firelight, but how to become multiple, how to house contradiction, how to wear mystery like a second skin. Bacchus didn't come to civilize you, he came to set you loose. There's a particular kind of joy you feel in the Bacchic rites. Dangerous joy. The kind that's too big for your body, the kind that stretches your mouth into a smile you don't control and rattles your bones until they beg for release. It's the kind of joy that scares people, especially the ones in charge. Because joy like that, uncontrolled, unregulated, unlicensed by the state, is practically treason. And tonight, that joy takes you apart. It starts small. A gathering near the edge of the grove, not one of the big rituals, no official chants, no sacred oils or anointed masks. Just a few of you huddled under torchlight sharing wine from a dented bronze cup. A flute plays in the distance, but it's unstructured, winding like a bird trying to remember its song. Marine isn't here tonight. Most of the priestesses are away, gathering herbs or holding a quiet rite in another grove. The mood is looser. Laughter flows like the wine, messy and honest. Someone dares you to run through the stream naked. You do. Someone else starts a slow, rhythmic clapping. And just like that, the air shifts, becomes charged. It's not a ceremony, not really, but it's enough. Then someone starts singing. Not words, just tones. Long and strange. One note bleeding into the next like smoke curling in a storm. It grips your spine, makes your scalp prickle. Another person joins in, then another. Before you know it, you're standing, arms out, feet moving without thought, mouth open and laughing. Not at something funny, but at the fact that you're alive and nothing else matters. You spin, you stumble, you fall into someone's arms. You can't remember their name, and it's better that way. You press your forehead to theirs and whisper something you don't understand. They nod like they've waited all night to hear it. The music builds. The flames grow taller. Bodies press in. Hot, fragrant, wild. You feel hands on your shoulders, on your back, lifting you up into the air like an offering. You shout, not in fear but in ecstasy. You don't know what you're saying. It's not Latin. It's not Greek. It's not anything you've ever spoken. It pours out of you like wine from a cracked amphora. Your throat burns, your chest shakes, and still you can't stop. You won't stop. You are sick with joy, and it feels holy. Your historical fact: ecstatic possession was a central element of Bacchic worship. Participants were said to be enthoused, literally to have the god enter their body. During these states, they lost control of their speech and movements. Ancient writers described them as howling, crying, laughing uncontrollably. Some even foamed at the mouth. But these weren't symptoms of madness. They were signs of divine presence. Your fringe fact: Roman doctors and philosophers who tried to analyse Bacchic possession often failed to agree on a cause. Some believed the symptoms were a form of divine fever, a sacred madness granted by the gods. Others called it a psychological illness, or worse, demonic corruption. One obscure treatise claimed Bacchanti were infected by lunar energy, absorbed through the soles of their feet during night rituals. Yes, seriously, and the scholarly debate, whether this joy was real, or a carefully constructed illusion. Some modern scholars argue the Bacchic rites were essentially prototherapy, designed to produce catharsis, emotional release, and communal bonding. Others believe the experiences were genuine spiritual events, impossible to reduce to chemical reactions or performance. And then there are those who suggest a third path, that the truth was the illusion, and the illusion was the truth. Back in the grove, your vision pulses. The firelight grows teeth. The trees bend inward, breathing with you. Someone is weeping near the stream, not from sorrow, but from too much feeling. Another is kneeling in the grass, arms raised to a sky they can't see. Laughter rolls through the trees like thunder. You feel it in your ribs. Then it happens. A sound, not from the grove, but beyond it. Snapping twigs, the hush that falls too fast, a whistle, then footsteps, too many, too heavy, not barefoot, not soft. Boots, you freeze. The others do too, some mid-laugh, some mid-song. The fire crackles loud in the sudden silence. One of the younger initiates bolts, vanishing into the trees. You stay still. And then they appear. Not guards, not senators, spies. 2 of them. Young, not clever, but armed. They step into the edge of the firelight and blink like they weren't expecting this wildness, this joy. One lowers his sword, the other fumbles for a name. "This is illegal," he says, voice cracking. No one responds. He looks around, clearly overwhelmed. The bodies, the masks, the stillness. He grips the hilt of his blade tighter. You're under investigation. A woman near the fire, naked, painted head to toe in symbols, smiles at him. Slowly, gently. Like a mother watching her child try to understand rain. "You can't arrest a god," she says softly. The men don't know what to do with that. Eventually they leave. No fight, no names taken. Just silence. But now you know. They're watching closer. The next time they might not be so hesitant. The The next time they might come with more than questions. The night resumes, but the mood has shifted. Not broken, but sobered. Someone adds more wood to the fire. Someone else begins a new song, slower, lower, built from breath and heartbeat and memory. You sit beside the stream, legs in the water, chest still buzzing from earlier. The joy hasn't left. It's just changed shape, grown teeth. You realise something strange. Joy, real joy, the kind that unhinges you from your life, is terrifying. It threatens to break everything Rome tells you to hold dear. Honour, control, restraint. You've tasted it now. It burned through you like lightning. You'll never be clean again, and thank the gods for that. There's a shadow in the grove now, not a physical one. You've walked the trails, checked the trees, swept the clearings. No boots crushed the vine leaves, no sword left a mark in the earth. But you feel it anyway, heavy and coiled, like something hiding behind your ribs. The others feel it too. The laughter is still there, but it lands softer now, glancing over shoulders. The wine still flows, but you sip slower, ears tuned to the silence between notes. Everyone is watching the edges, because someone is watching you. It started with a flash. One night, just past the stream, you caught it, a glint of bronze under a moonless sky, far too perfect to be a trick of the light. You froze. It vanished. You told yourself it was nothing, a dropped goblet, a strange rock. But deep down, you knew better. You've been followed, not once, not constantly, just enough to know you're not as invisible as you want to be. The others begin to whisper, soft, drifting conversations held in pairs, never groups. Someone saw a man watching from the trees. Someone found a boot print in the mud that didn't match any of theirs. Someone claims a fellow initiate was taken, disappeared without a word, not run away, not gone to the coast, taken. And now every movement feels like a test. When you walk to the grove, you loop through the city twice, pausing near the fish market, pretending to buy olives. You change cloaks, you duck through alleys, you avoid familiar faces. The paranoia doesn't feel like fear, it feels like survival. Still, you go, of course you go, because the rites haven't stopped. They've simply tightened. Fewer people, lower fires, shorter ceremonies, sometimes no music at all. Just breath and heat and that strange hum that lives at the edge of speech. You kneel beside others and say nothing, and still you speak. But you watch now, you scan the shadows, and one night you see him. Not clearly, just enough. A shape at the tree line. Tall, thin, still. No mask, no movement, just there, watching. You don't say anything. You don't chase him. You just stare back, a flicker of challenge in your blood. If he's waiting for something, he's going to get it. You ask Marine later if she's seen him. She nods once. He's new, clumsy, but patient. Is he military? She shrugs. Maybe, maybe not. The Senate doesn't always send swords. Sometimes they send scribes. You feel your stomach turn. You ask if she's afraid. No, she says simply. He can't write down what he doesn't understand. Your historical fact tonight. During the Senate's investigation into the Bacchanalia, spies and informants were widely used. Roman authorities couldn't simply storm into the groves without proof, or at least claims of criminal activity. So they sent watchers, sometimes officials, sometimes former cult members, sometimes young men with debts and ambition. Their job wasn't just to observe, it was to report, record and gather enough names to feed the machine of Roman justice. Your fringe fact. A few of these spies reportedly went rogue. Not in the way Rome feared, no betrayal or sabotage, but in the opposite direction. They joined, slowly, secretly. There are accounts of investigators who began to attend rites not to expose them, but to understand them, and in doing so, became worshippers themselves. One was later executed after being caught wearing a woman's robe during a ceremony, and the scholarly debate, whether these infiltrators ever truly understood what they saw. Were they witnessing the heart of the rite, or just the outer shell? Some historians believe the true Bacchanalia kept layers of secrecy, using staged rituals to deceive spies while preserving the deeper mysteries for trusted initiates. Others argue that the rites were so immersive, so emotionally overwhelming that even an outsider couldn't help but be changed. Back in the grove, you try not to look for the man, but you feel him. Not every night, just enough. A rustle, a broken twig, a glint of movement between the trees. The others start noticing too. You see it in how they turn their heads, how they lean closer during chants, how the wine is passed faster, hands tighter on the cup, and then, during one particularly quiet night, he steps into the firelight. No cloak, no sword, just a neutral tunic, dusty and worn. He looks unremarkable, which makes him suspicious. His hands are up, palms empty. He speaks clearly. "I don't want to stop you," he says. "I just want to see." Silence. Marine steps forward. She studies him like she's reading a damaged scroll. Why? He doesn't hesitate. Because I've read the reports, and none of them match. That's the moment something shifts. Not because he's earned trust. He hasn't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But because he's done the one thing most outsiders never do. He admitted he doesn't understand. The rites don't stop. They never would. But something changes in how they move around him. He's not welcomed, not exactly, but he's tolerated, watched, measured. He sits on the outer ring, silent, eyes wide. He never takes the wine. He never joins the chant, but he listens. And something in his posture tells you he's hearing more than just sound. You begin to wonder, will he write it down? And if he does, will anyone believe him? Because how do you explain a rite where people sob in joy? How do you describe a night where a man wore feathers and kissed the earth until it answered back? How do you document a transformation when even the person who lived it doesn't know which part was real? Maybe he's not here to document. Maybe he's here to remember. The others say nothing about him. No orders are given, no debates held. But his presence changes the shape of the grove, like a ripple that lingers. Long after the stone sinks, you sleep light now, one ear always open, one eye half watching. But the god, he sleeps deeper than ever, because Bacchus knows being watched is not the same as being seen. You don't expect it to happen that night. You've been careful. Everyone has. The fire is small, the chants are whispered, the wine diluted, masks are worn, names avoided. Even Marine keeps to the shadows now, her voice reserved only for necessary invocations, and yet the air feels wrong. You notice it in the way the wind moves, too sharp, too sudden. You notice it in the birds, or rather, the lack of them. The grove is quiet in all the wrong ways. You should have left when the first dog barked from somewhere far beyond the trees. You should have run when you saw the birds rise from the canopy in a frantic spiral, but you didn't, because Bacchanalia don't run from shadows, not until they have teeth. The raid doesn't begin with noise, it begins with light, torches, dozens of them, pushed through the trees like spears. The grove flares gold, shadows bolt in all directions. For a moment you can't breathe, then the shouting starts. "By order of the Senate! Surrender! This gathering is unlawful!" They pour in like floodwater, guards, soldiers, officials, men in armour in robes with scrolls and blades and burning eyes. You freeze. Others scatter. Some try to vanish into the woods, masks half torn, vines slipping from their hair. One man tackles a priestess to the ground. Another drags an initiate by the wrist, her robe ripping away in the dirt. You grab the nearest tree and duck low, heart hammering. Smoke fills the grove as torches ignite the edge of the sacred circle. Fire eats the offering bowl. Someone screams. Whether in pain or panic you can't tell. And then, just as you're about to run, you see her. Marine. She's standing in the centre of the chaos, calm as ever. Her robe is gone. She wears only ash and a crown of ivy. Her arms are outstretched. She doesn't move. She doesn't beg. She simply watches as the soldiers close in, as two of them grab her, as a third shouts for her to kneel like a Roman woman. She spits. Your historical fact. The Bacchanalia crackdown reached its violent peak in 186 BCE, when the Senate mobilized legions to disrupt the cult's gatherings. Thousands were arrested, temples were destroyed, sacred groves like yours were burned. The Senate accused the Bacchanalia of everything from public disorder to conspiracy, sedition, and human sacrifice. Worshipping Bacchus wasn't just a religious offence anymore, it was political. Your fringe fact. Some arrested Bacchanalia didn't resist. They laughed. They sang as they were dragged through the forum. One woman, when sentenced to death, kissed the executioner's blade and whispered a blessing over it. There were rumours that some priests vanished before they could be taken, simply disappeared into the earth. Stories say the god, hid them in the roots of the trees or swallowed them into stone, and the scholarly debate, whether the Senate truly feared the rites or simply used the fear as a tool. Some believe the Bacchanalia was a convenient scapegoat for growing unrest in Rome, an excuse to tighten control over the lower classes and non-traditional movements. Others think the Senate did believe the god was real and that he was winning. You don't run, you crawl. Through the vines, behind the rocks, along a trail you've memorized in darkness. You aren't alone. Others are escaping too, faces streaked with soot and tears, carrying nothing but the god inside them. At the edge of the grove, you look back once. Just once. The fire is rising now, flames licking the trees, devouring the altar. One of the older priestesses is tied to a post, her mouth still moving in silent prayer. Myrrhine is gone. Taken or killed, you don't know. All you know is the grove will never be the same. You make it to the river. You wade through knee-deep water, your robe dragging, mask floating beside you like a broken leaf. On the other side, you find shelter in an old shepherd's hut, abandoned long ago. You sit in silence with the others, 7, maybe 8 of you. No one speaking, just breathing, shaking, grieving. Someone breaks the silence. They got her. No one asks who. They all know. You stare at your hands, dirt under your nails, wine dried in the creases, blood too, though you're not sure whose. Your body aches in places you didn't know existed. Your mind spins, and through it all, underneath the pain, underneath the fear, the god hums, quiet, gentle, present. You realize something that shakes you more than the soldiers, more than the fire, more than the scream you still hear echoing through your chest. He's not gone. They burned the grove, they tore down the altar, but the god remains. He's in your breath, your blood, the memory of the dance, the echo of the chant. You could bury the last wine jug, silence every song, destroy every sacred mask, and he would still be there, waiting, patient, curled like smoke in your bones. Someone stands. It's the youngest of the group, a boy, no more than 15, still trembling. He steps outside into the dark and begins to hum. Quiet at first, just a note, then a second, then a third. You join him. One by one, the others do too. No lyrics, no chant, just the sound of the god being remembered. You won't return to the grove, not now, maybe never, but you'll build a new one, in a cellar, in a barn, in a back alley behind the Temple of Jupiter where the priests pretend not to see. The rite will change shape, it always does, but it will survive, because Bacchus never dies. He waits. You don't sleep after the raid. Not really. You close your eyes, yes. Your body rests, mostly because it has no other choice. But sleep? Sleep implies dreams, softness, safety. What you experience is more like hovering, half in your body, half outside, floating above the floor of that abandoned hut while the others twitch and murmur in their uneasy dozing. You lie on your back, staring at the ceiling, where cracks in the wood form patterns you try not to read like omens. When you do finally drift off, it's with Myrrhine's voice echoing in your mind. Not any one phrase, but the way she spoke during rituals. Strong, low, with a rhythm that felt more like breath than speech. You see her hands again, always moving, pouring, painting, guiding. Her hands were the first thing you trusted in that grove, and now they're gone. You rise just before dawn. The others are silent. Some are pretending to sleep same as you. The boy who hummed last night is curled up beside a woman you don't know, her fingers still in his hair. A man near the door clutches a broken thyrsus staff like a club. No one speaks. There's nothing to say yet. You go outside, letting the door close quietly behind you. The sky's just beginning to shift from black to ash. Birds are starting to return, cautiously. You envy them, their simplicity, their freedom to flee without consequence. The grove is gone, burned, scattered, soiled. You feel it in your chest like a splinter that went in too deep to pull out. And worse than the pain is the guilt. You survived. You ran. You don't know who else made it. You don't know if anyone did. And the shame of that, of still breathing, is heavy. By noon, you reach the city. You've changed cloaks, washed your face in a cold stream, hid the bracelet of vines under your sleeve. You walk like someone going to market or to prayer or to a lover. You look ordinary, that's the point. You have to be ordinary now. But you feel the god twitching beneath your skin like a moth under fabric. He's restless, and so are you. You're seized before nightfall. Not violently, not in the way you expected. You're walking through the suburra, avoiding eye contact, thinking about how strange it is to not hear the drums, and suddenly a hand grips your shoulder. 2 men, one in armour, the other in a fine wool tunic, no weapon visible, but something much more dangerous in his eyes. Curiosity. Name, he says. You give it. Your legal name, your boring name, the one you haven't heard spoken in weeks. He nods. You're coming with us. The cell is colder than you thought it would be. Not physically, but spiritually. No windows, no voices, just the scrape of stone and the soft clink of chains somewhere down the hall. They don't bind you. Not yet. They don't need to. The man in the tunic returns with parchment, a wax tablet, a bored expression that doesn't match the glint in his eyes. You were seen, he says, at the grove. You say nothing. He leans in. We have the priestess, Myrine. That almost breaks you. You look up. Fast, involuntary. He smiles, thin and cruel. Ah, so you do know her. Your historical fact. After the Bacchanalia was officially banned, the Senate authorised tribunals across Rome and its provinces. Interrogations were common, sometimes public, often brutal. Suspected worshippers were pressured to name others, to describe rituals to confirm the Senate's worst fears. Many refused. Some lied. A few told the truth, but no one believed them. Fringe fact. In one recorded case, an initiate under questioning began to chant mid-interrogation. Not a name, not a confession, a chant. The scribes recorded that the guards tried to silence him, but his voice didn't stop, not even when his mouth was covered. The tribunal claimed it was ventriloquism. Others said it was the god speaking through him, refusing to let him die unheard. And the debate, how many of the testimonies were real? Were these records embellished, rewritten, reshaped by Roman paranoia? Some scholars believe the Senate used the interrogations as theatre, to convince the public that the cult was demonic, depraved, a threat to every Roman family. Others argue that the Baccanti did say wild things, things that couldn't be explained, things that frightened even the questioners. Back in your cell, the man reads aloud from his tablet, accused of illegal assembly, corrupting Roman youth, engaging in rites of Dionysian frenzy, impersonating a priest and withholding names of fellow conspirators. He looks up. Quite a list. You meet his gaze. Is it illegal to feel joy? That throws him. For a moment. Then he leans back and sighs. You people, he says, you always speak in riddles. Joy, ecstasy, truth. None of that matters. What matters is control. And there it is, the thing they're really afraid of. You offer no more answers, and they stop asking for now. The days blur, no sunlight, no time. Food comes, water comes, no words. You find yourself humming in the dark, very softly, a tune you barely remember, the same one Myrine sang before blessing the vine. One night, you dream you're back in the grove. Everything is as it was. The torches lit, the drums pulsing, the vines curling underfoot. But something's different. Everyone is silent. Not out of fear, out of respect. And in the centre stands Myrine, arms lifted, her voice steady. They can't kill a god, she says, but they can kill the ones who carry him. You wake with tears in your eyes. They come for you the next morning. A change of clothes, a basin of water. They want you clean, presentable. You don't ask why. The man in the tunic escorts you, silent, through a corridor that smells of wet parchment and fear. You pass other cells, other eyes, some you recognise, most you don't. Then a wooden door, a brass seal, a courtroom. You're going on trial, not for murder, not for treason, for dancing, for worshipping something older than Rome, for carrying joy that refused to be regulated. You stand tall, you say nothing, because Bacchus doesn't plead, he sings. The courtroom is cold in the way only Roman spaces know how to be, wide and echoing, built more to impress than to hold warmth. You stand at the centre of it all, feet planted on marble so polished you can see your reflection shivering beneath you. Statues of old gods and old emperors stare down from niches along the walls, their blank eyes and stone togas silently judging. You don't belong here, and every inch of the room is designed to make sure you remember that. A crowd has gathered, not huge, not raucous, but sharp-eyed and silent. Senators, priests, curious aristocrats who wouldn't dare be seen at a Bacchic rite, but are suddenly fascinated now that someone's on trial for one. You feel their gaze as if it has weight. They don't look at you like a criminal. They look at you like a specimen, a thing, a problem to be dissected. Then comes the voice. The court calls the accused. You step forward, flanked by two guards whose armour clinks with every movement. They don't touch you, but their presence presses in. You're supposed to feel like a threat contained. Dangerous, but under control. The presiding magistrate is a man you've seen before. Not at a rite, no, at a temple. Jupiter's temple. A devout type, known for his stiff prayers and long, humorless fasts. He eyes you like you're already guilty. You stand accused, he says, of unlawful religious assembly, sedition, obscenity, and treason against the values of the Republic. How do you respond? You say nothing. Silence is the only language the god allows you now. Very well, the magistrate says. Let the record show that the accused offers no denial. The trial unfolds like a play, and you know your part already. Witnesses, officials, scribes, scrolls unrolled like ribbons of rot. A guard reports seeing naked dancers invoking madness. A neighbour claims to have heard chanting late into the night. A former initiate, eyes dull and voice flat, swears under oath that Mirren sacrificed a goat and drank its blood, though you know for a fact that she couldn't stomach even lamb stew. Your historical fact: the Senatus Consultum de Bacchanalia, passed in 186 BCE, was one of the most aggressive religious edicts in Roman history. It outlawed not only the rites, but the entire structure of Bacchic worship, its gatherings, its priesthood, its language. From then on, anyone wishing to hold a Bacchic ritual had to apply for special permission from the Senate, and even then only small groups were allowed, under the oversight of Roman officials. The penalties for non-compliance ranged from exile to execution. Fringe fact: the original decree, preserved in bronze and still readable today, includes a chilling clause. If anyone knows of a Bacchic gathering and fails to report it, they too are guilty. It wasn't just about stopping the cult, it was about isolating it, cutting out every connection like infected tissue. The god wasn't just banned, he was erased. And the debate: was this suppression motivated by real fear or just political calculation? Some scholars argue that Rome was in a period of intense paranoia, foreign influences, internal corruption, instability in the provinces. The Bacchic cult became the perfect lightning rod. Foreign, ecstatic, impossible to control. Others believe it truly frightened them, not because of crime, but because it worked. People loved it, and Rome couldn't compete with that kind of devotion. Back in the courtroom, someone reads aloud from a scroll of evidence, phrases pulled from a chant you half remember from a ritual weeks ago. Break the vessel, pour the self, be unbound. The magistrate raises an eyebrow. What does this mean? Still, you don't answer. They bring in a thyrsus staff wrapped in grape leaves, old, dried, delicate. The guard holds it like it's a weapon. A tool of corruption, the magistrate says, a symbol of excess and chaos. You think of all the things that staff has done: blessing wine, stirring herbs, tracing symbols across the foreheads of initiates trembling with new life, and now it's just a prop for fear. The next witness nearly breaks you. They bring in Marine. She walks slowly, but unaided. She wears a simple robe. Her hands are bound, but her back is straight. She doesn't look at you as she passes, not out of shame, but defiance. She refuses to be used, even now. The magistrate asks her to confirm her role as high priestess. She says nothing. They ask her if she performed illegal rituals. She smiles. That's all. Then finally they ask, was this person, gesturing toward you, a member of your cult? She looks at you, really looks. And for a moment the courtroom vanishes. You're back in the grove. The vines sway above, the firelight dances, and she's laying her hand on your chest, whispering, "You are ready." Then she answers, "No." The room stirs. The magistrate frowns. He was reborn, she adds. He's not the same man. And somehow, that's not just a denial. It's the truth. They dismiss her. You don't see where they take her. She disappears through a wooden door and it swallows her whole. The magistrate rises to deliver your verdict. You know it already. This was never a real trial. It was theatre, a message, a performance of law meant to justify fear. But before he speaks, something strange happens. The court clerk, just a boy, maybe 20, drops his stylus. It clatters to the floor, and when he bends to retrieve it, you see something under his sleeve. A bracelet, woven from vine. You lock eyes. He doesn't blink, he doesn't smile, he just nods, and suddenly your shame disappears. They can try to ban joy, burn groves, shatter cups and scatter masks, but they cannot kill the memory of it. The god is already inside their walls, their scribes, their sons. The magistrate declares you guilty. Your punishment, exile. You're to leave Rome by sundown, never to return. Your name is stricken from public record. Your family, if you still have one, is instructed to forget you. But you don't care, because the god is coming with you. They walk you out of Rome like a ghost. No procession, no public shaming, no crowd to spit or jeer. Just 2 guards, the steady crunch of sandals on gravel, and the echo of your name being unspoken by the whole city. You pass familiar landmarks, the Forum, the steps of the Temple of Saturn, the cracked marble fountain near your old insula, and they all feel distant now, like they belong to someone else. Maybe they do. That person is gone, executed without ceremony. You carry his ashes inside you like warm coals. The guards don't speak. They don't need to. You've already been erased. When you reach the city gates, they stop. One of them, the older one, takes a small scroll from inside his tunic. He unrolls it and reads your sentence aloud in a voice so bored it might be reciting a dinner menu. Exile, effective immediately. You're forbidden to return on pain of death. Your property, what little there was, has been confiscated. Your civic identity has been dissolved. Then, strangely, he lowers the scroll and asks, "Do you have anywhere to go?" You don't answer. He shrugs. Didn't think so. They turn, walk back through the gates. The iron bars slam shut behind them. The sound is final, official. You're outside now, and Rome never looks back. For a moment you just stand there, unsure of which way to go. North leads to nothing but mountains and old temples turned sheep pens. East is too exposed. The road to Ostia, westward, is crawling with watchmen and rumour. But south is memory. Vineyards, hills, and something more. The grove is gone, yes, burned, but the land is still there, and vines, like the god, are not easily killed. You turn south. The first night is quiet, too quiet. The stars feel cruel in their clarity. You build a small fire with wet sticks and watch it sputter. You sip from a wineskin that tastes like dust. You try to pray, but the words feel too large in your dry mouth. Then, from the dark, a voice. Still breathing? You nearly fall over. A figure steps into the firelight, broad-shouldered, hooded, holding a satchel that bulges with something lumpy. You tense until you see the necklace, a simple wooden charm in the shape of a spiral, a Bacchanalia. You don't recognize him, but he clearly recognizes you. He sits without waiting for permission, drops the satchel, and pulls out 2 loaves of coarse bread. One is handed to you. "We heard they exiled you," he says. "We?" you ask. He grins. "We?" Over the next few days you begin to understand. The cult did not die in that grove. It scattered. It ran like spilled wine down the cracks of the Republic, and it reformed, in pockets, in whispers, in cellars and caves and abandoned farmhouses. Some fled across the sea, others retreated deeper into the countryside, but no one forgot. Not really. You're taken to one of these places. It isn't much, just an old grain storage room beneath a crumbling villa. But it's dark, it's warm, and it's alive. People sit in circles on the floor. They hum, they pass cups, they tell stories not in grand speeches but in murmurs. I remember the night I touched the god's hand. I saw him in the fire. I heard him in my own scream. You ask about Myrrhine. A woman, older, with a scar across one cheek, nods slowly. Taken to a holding temple, she says, for re-education. You don't know what that means, not exactly, but you know it's bad. There are stories of what happens to priests and priestesses who refuse to convert, who won't bow to Jupiter or recite the clean, state-approved prayers. They are starved, drugged, marched in circles until their minds break or their hearts stop, and if they survive, they are never the same. The rage that fills you is blinding, but you say nothing, not yet. Instead, you stay with these people. You help rebuild the rites, piecing them together like broken pottery. Everyone remembers something. A chant, a movement, a recipe for the wine, a symbol drawn in ash. Slowly, the ritual takes shape again, not identical but true. Different, but rooted in the same soil. One night, during a rite lit by a single oil lamp, someone asks you to lead. You hesitate, but then you remember her voice, her hand on your shoulder, her whisper, "Rise." So you do. You chant the first words, someone joins, then another. The room grows warmer, the oil in the lamp dances, the god comes, not as fire, not as frenzy, but as breath. Steady, real. The god is not dead, he is listening. Your historical fact. Even after the Senate's crackdown, Bacchic worship persisted in hidden forms. Some scholars believe it survived for centuries, disguised beneath more acceptable cults, or embedded in local festivals. The suppression failed to erase the god. It only drove him underground, where he became myth, memory and magic. Fringe fact. In the centuries that followed, fragments of Bacchic rites turned up in unlikely places, among early Christian ascetics, in regional folk practices, even in funeral inscriptions that reference wine and ecstasy as part of the afterlife. Bacchus never returned as a state god. He didn't have to. He had already seeped into everything, and the debate, was this survival deliberate or inevitable? Did the followers of Bacchus orchestrate a secret resistance? Or did the god simply persist through the cracks of memory and hunger? Scholars argue both sides. Some say the cult became political, others say it never needed to. Because once someone dances with the god, they carry him forever. You sleep that night with your head on stone and your heart full of fire. The rites are still alive, the god is still present, and you're not just a worshipper anymore, you are a vessel, a flame keeper. And somewhere, deep in the echoing dark of a Roman prison, you imagine Myrrhine, humming a song beneath her breath, soft and defiant, and you hum it too, not as mourning, but as promise. The stories they tell about you are impressive and absolutely wrong. You hear them in whispers at taverns, muttered over cups of watered-down wine. You hear your own name, twisted, embroidered, made dramatic for effect. They say you were naked and covered in blood when the soldiers seized you, that you shouted prophecies in the courtroom and summoned a snake from your mouth, that you bit off your own tongue in defiance, that you were possessed, writhing, foaming, unkillable. They say Myrrhine transformed into a wolf and escaped through the wall. They say the cult sacrificed infants in secret vaults. They say Bacchus is the devil in disguise. You learn very quickly that it doesn't matter what you actually did. What matters is the story Rome tells, and Rome is a master of storytelling, especially when it wants to make you a monster. There's a scroll circulating in the forum now. You haven't read it yourself, but others have recited parts. The Confessions of a Bacchante, written, supposedly, by a repentant former priest. It describes orgies, torture, child murder, blood drinking, and people turning into animals under moonlight. It's lurid, it's vile, it's fiction, and everyone loves it. You don't laugh when you hear it. You don't cry either. You just feel tired. You wonder who wrote it. A clerk in a Senate office, a failed poet in need of coin, maybe even the same man who escorted you to trial. Maybe he watched the rites and saw only the parts his fear let him understand. One night, sitting by a fire in a farmhouse cellar, you ask a woman named Thaleia, an old initiate who claims she once danced at Myrrhine's side, why the lies matter so much. She doesn't hesitate. Because truth doesn't terrify people, she says, but lies they choose to believe. And you understand. Because the truth is simple. The rites were joy, surrender, rebirth. They were wild, yes, but never cruel. They held space for pain, for desire, for becoming something more. There were no altars of blood. There were no knives in the dark. Just breathe. Fire. Ecstasy. You weren't destroying the world. You were trying to escape the one built to keep you small. But Rome can't control joy like that, so it calls it treason. Your historical fact. After the suppression of the Bacchanalia, official records were full of sensational claims. The Senate portrayed the cult as a network of criminals and deviants who plotted murder and treason under the guise of religious ritual. The most infamous charge was that the rites included human sacrifice, especially of children. No physical evidence of this has ever been found. But the power of the accusation did all the work Rome needed. Fringe fact, some of the confessions gathered during the Senate's investigation are believed by modern scholars to have been coerced, extracted under threat, torture, or promise of clemency. In one preserved document, a woman confesses to giving birth to a goat-headed child sired by the god. Scholars now widely consider this a product of religious hysteria, or forced confession under extreme duress. And the debate, whether the Bacchic cult was ever as wild as the state made it seem. Were the rites truly chaotic and subversive, or was that narrative crafted to justify suppression? Some argue the truth lies somewhere in the middle. Rituals of real emotional power, misunderstood and feared by those who had never dared experience them. You live in the shadow of that lie now, exiled, hunted, twisted into myth. You walk from village to village, often under a false name, carrying only what you can hide in a satchel. A mask, a cup, a bit of incense wrapped in cloth. You meet others like you, former initiates, sympathetic farmers, wanderers who once heard the god's voice in a dream and never forgot it. You rebuild the rites, quietly, in fields under stars, in barns behind hay bales, in ruined temples no longer watched. You keep the chants alive. You keep her memory alive, because if they rewrite what you did, they'll try to erase who you were, and that cannot happen. One evening, in a town just north of Capua, you hear something that freezes your breath. They're planning another sweep, someone says, looking for those who fled. They say the cult's reformed, more dangerous than ever. The speaker, a weary traveller with cracked hands and a sunburned neck, glances at you. They say they're coming for the survivors. You don't sleep that night. You pace. You think. You ache. But not from fear, from resolve. You've let them tell their story long enough. The next night you gather your small circle, 12 of you, seated in a half-buried cellar beneath an old orchard, and you speak the truth. You tell them how the rites began, what you saw, what you felt. You speak of Myrrhine, her strength, her songs, her hands covered in ash. You describe the moment you first heard the god, not in thunder, not in frenzy, but in the breath between beats. The silence that came before the chant. You tell them what you lost, and what you found. They listen, every word. Then someone asks, "What do we do now?" You answer without thinking. We sing louder. The next rite isn't a secret. You hold it in a field just outside the town, visible from the hills. You light fires, you chant in the open, you wear your masks boldly, and if they come for you again, you'll be ready. Because now the story isn't just theirs, it's yours too, and you're going to tell it with fire. You return to the field the next morning, half convinced it will be a smouldering ruin. Part of you expects to find guards waiting, dragging ropes and shackles through the crushed grass, ashes scattered where your fire once burned. Instead, there's nothing. Just the smell of smoke still hanging faint in the air and footsteps in the dirt where people dance with bare feet and full hearts. The vines nearby are undisturbed, the trees silent. It worked. For now. You know it won't last. But that's not the point. The point was the doing. The act of claiming joy again, openly, without shame or disguise. It wasn't just a ritual. It was a declaration, a defiant hymn made of flesh and breath and memory, and you sang it loud enough that even the moon turned her face to listen. And the people, they were hungry. They came in greater numbers than you expected. Peasants, tradesmen, even a former legionary who knelt with tears in his eyes and whispered, "I thought the god had died." Some knew the chants already, half remembered from childhood or overheard in alleyways. Others simply listened, wide-eyed, as the firelight painted shadows of something older than the laws that kept them afraid. You called on Bacchus, and they answered with their bodies, with rhythm, with release. You saw men weep and laugh at the same time. You saw women tear off the silence their husbands had draped over them. You saw people whose names you never learned touch the ground and rise again as something unburdened. and for a few short hours the Empire did not matter. But you knew what would come next. 2 nights later, it begins. Not a raid this time, just a whisper. A farmer finds a painted symbol on his door, one used to mark suspected heretics. Another hears the town priest mention heathens nesting in the orchard. A third spots a pair of strangers asking too many questions in the tavern. Your people scatter again, but they move like a flock now. No panic, no fear, just movement, controlled, practiced. You hold the next rite underground. The wine is sweeter somehow, the chants softer, but more resonant. There is a power in secrecy, not the kind born from fear, but from intention. You're no longer just surviving, you're shaping something, and yet the lies persist. This time it's a scroll posted in the town square, signed with a senator's seal. It accuses the cult of treason, unnatural acts, and infecting the lower classes with foreign ecstasies. You nearly laugh, as if joy were a disease, the phrase that haunts you most, what you actually did. Because if you try to answer it plainly, if someone were to ask, what did you actually do in those rites? What could you say? You sang, you danced, you shed what didn't serve you, you laughed so hard your ribs ached, you cried until the god placed silence in your throat like a gift. You touched another soul without permission from the state. You felt your body, not as property, not as labour, but as yours, and that, in Rome, is criminal. Your historical fact, after the initial crackdown, Rome didn't just stop Bacchic worship, it replaced it. The state-sponsored cults of Jupiter, Mars and Minerva were emphasised more than ever. Festivals became formalised, scripted, sterile. The Senate even began to create state-sanctioned versions of previously banned rituals, stripped of their ecstatic elements and repackaged as moral celebrations. Bacchus was reduced to a harvest god, a mascot. Fringe fact. In some provinces, Bacchic symbols were quietly merged with Christian iconography. Ivy wreaths became halos. Wine remained sacred but lost its frenzy. Some depictions of Christ in rural chapels from later centuries show him barefoot, wild-haired, holding grapes, and smiling. Scholars still argue whether these were accidents, artistic flourishes, or deliberate survival tactics from exiled Bacchanti turned early converts. And the debate? Whether Bacchic worship ever really ended. Some believe it lived on as an underground tradition for generations, changing names, faces, gods, but keeping the same heartbeat. Others say it died completely, and all we have now are echoes. But if you've felt it, if you've danced with the god, you know the truth. Bacchus doesn't die, he transforms. You feel that transformation in yourself now. You're no longer just an exile. You're a carrier, a vessel, a seed. Everywhere you walk, you scatter fragments of the rite. A chant here, a blessing there, a song hummed too softly to catch but loud enough to linger. You don't proselytize. That's not the Bacchic way. You don't preach. You offer, and people respond. One woman finds you outside a bakery, tears streaming down her cheeks. She clasps your wrist and whispers, "I saw him. In a dream. He danced." A merchant's apprentice leaves a cup of wine on your doorstep. No note, just reverence. You begin to realize the god is spreading again. Not in groves or temples, in people, in memory, in hunger. And you wonder, was this his plan all along? To be broken, scattered, to live not as an institution but as a virus of joy, to infect the lonely, the grieving, the forgotten, to dwell in their lungs until they sing. One night, just before dusk, a stranger approaches you, hooded, nervous. You tense. You've been followed before, but this one speaks quickly, quietly. They're moving marine. Your chest tightens. Where? He doesn't know. A prison cart, eastbound. No guards announced, no ceremony, quiet transfer, forgotten prisoner. She's not even listed by name, just a female heretic bound for re-education in a mountain monastery. You thank him. He disappears. You stare at the fire that night, not moving. You don't eat, you don't sleep. The others notice, but they don't speak. They've seen this look before. You're planning something. And you are. Because Bacchus doesn't forgive the silencing of a voice that once called him down from the stars. He avenges. It starts with a wine jug. Not just any jug. An old one, chipped at the base. the glaze worn thin from years of use. Inside it, nothing but air and a scrap of folded parchment. On the parchment, a map. Crude, hand-drawn, with more guesses than facts. A thick black line, marking a road twisting into the mountains, a dot halfway up. Transfer point, it reads in hurried script. Below that, a second word, Myrrhine. You stare at it for hours. The fire burns low, then flares again. You don't move. You trace the path over and over, memorizing it, praying it's real. This could be anything, a trap, a rumour, a desperate hope, but it feels right. And when something feels like that, in your chest, in your bones, in the soft underside of your wrists, it's usually the god, whispering, nudging. You gather what you need, a cloak, thick and dark, a skin of wine, a knife, dull but solid. You don't tell the others everything, not yet. You just say, I have to go, and that's enough. They nod. Thalea presses a thyrsus staff into your hand. Bare wood, no ornament. If you find her, she says, remind her who she is. The road to the mountains is quiet at first. Too quiet. No soldiers, no patrols, just cart tracks in the dirt and the occasional cry of a hawk above. You move quickly, keeping to trees and stone walls. You sleep little. When you do, the dreams come. Flickering visions of Myrrhine in chains, her mouth sewn shut, her hands burned to ash, but always, always, her eyes remain defiant. On the third night, you find the road. It winds up into the hills, flanked by cypress trees and pale rocks. The air thins as you climb, and with it comes something else. An ache you haven't felt in weeks. The old pull, the beat. Faint, deep, as if the god himself is buried beneath the soil waiting. Then you hear it. Wheels on stone, muffled hoofbeats. You duck behind a tree, breath shallow. A cart approaches. No insignia. Just 2 oxen, a covered wagon, and 3 guards on horseback. One at the front, 2 trailing. Silent. Bored. You wait until the cart passes. Then you follow. For hours. You stay low, moving from shadow to shadow, heart pounding so loudly you're sure they'll hear it. Finally, the road narrows and the cart slows. The guards dismount to rest. One wanders off to piss in the grass. The others drink from a jug and mutter about that mad priestess who won't stop humming. Your blood runs cold. She's in there, and she's still singing. You don't wait for a better moment. You act. You hurl the wine jug first, high, spinning, smashing into the cart with a crash that startles the oxen. As the guards leap up confused, you rush from the trees screaming the first chant that comes to mind. Not in Latin, not in Greek. The old tongue. The one from the rituals. The one that tastes like dirt and wind. The guards freeze. You use the moment to strike. Thyrsus against skull. Not enough to kill, just enough to unmake. The second guard lunges, but you dodge. He grabs your cloak, tears it. You slice at his leg with your knife, barely grazing him, but he howls like you ripped out his soul. The third one runs. Coward. You leap onto the cart. Myrrhine is inside, bound at wrists and ankles, lips cracked. Eyes sharp as ever. Took you long enough, she rasps. You cut the ropes. She laughs. Hoarse, wild, alive. And just like that, you're running. Together. Through trees, through underbrush, up and down gullies, branches clawing at your skin. You don't know where you're going. You just move. Eventually, miles later, you stop. Collapse beside a stream. Gasping, bleeding, grinning. She turns to you. How many still sing? You smile. More than Rome wants to admit. And then you both laugh. Loud, reckless, sacrilegious. The kind of laughter that raises the dead. Your historical fact. Escape narratives like this one exist in fragmentary form. Poems, letters, folk songs passed down through generations. One tells of a priestess named Mira, rescued from exile by a former initiate. Another speaks of a runaway godwoman who roamed the countryside with a staff and a broken voice. Most historians dismissed these as legends, until, that is, a carved stone was found deep in the Apennines, etched with the words, "He came for her." She rose again. Fringe fact. In one strange case, a Roman magistrate's journal, discovered centuries later, mentions a disturbance involving a female heretic, a vanished prisoner, and local peasants claiming to see flames dance without fire. The entry ends abruptly, the rest of the scroll is missing, and the debate, whether any of these tales are true, whether the god really helped them escape, whether Myrrine even survived. Some say she became a travelling mystic, wandering from village to village. Others claim she died in chains. Some think she never existed at all. But for those who danced with her, she was real enough. You and Myrrine hide for weeks, moving undercover, helped by strangers who somehow know. You share food, stories, firelight. She's thinner now, worn, but not broken. She begins to teach again, and you listen. One night, as you sit beneath the stars, she tells you the god's final secret. He doesn't need worship, she says. He needs witnesses. You ask what she means. He's not here to rule, he's here to remind that joy exists, that freedom is possible, that you don't have to earn love, you just have to surrender. You stay quiet for a long time, then you whisper, "We should return." She looks at you, smiles. "We already have." The night you and Myrrine walk back into the circle is the first time you see people weep just from the sight of someone. No torches, no chant, no ceremony has begun. And still, when she steps into the space, barefoot and smiling, with her hair wild and streaked with dust, the entire grove seems to exhale. Someone gasps. Someone else falls to their knees. A young girl covers her mouth like she's seeing a god, not a priestess. Even the firelight bends toward her as if recognizing something holy returned from the dark. Myrrine raises no hand. She says no words. She just stands there, and that's enough. Every part of her says, "I lived." Every breath is a sermon. Every scar is a chant. You stand beside her, unsure whether to weep or laugh, so you do both. Quietly, in rhythm. Because for the first time in what feels like years, there's nothing to fear. The god is here. Not in smoke or wine or song, but in her eyes, in this gathering, in this moment. The rite begins softly. No command. Just a single hum. The layer starts it, voice low and steady, and others join in, one by one, until the grove vibrates with resonance. Myrrine kneels, palms open. You kneel too. The circle tightens. Someone lights the first torch, and the Bacchantes sing. It's not one of the old songs, it's something new, a melody built from fragments, borrowed from the chants you salvaged, the dreams others whispered, the rhythm of Myrrine's breathing while she slept beside a stream in exile. It's not what Rome banned, it's what survived. The ritual flows like wine from a cracked amphora. It spills, spirals, grows. One by one the people rise, dance, touch, transformation. But this time, it's gentler, deeper. There's no urgency to escape, no need to hide, just being, just belonging. You watch someone remove their mask, not with drama, but with reverence. They offer it to the fire, and the fire accepts. Another lifts a cup to the sky and drinks slowly, eyes closed, smiling with every swallow. A man and woman holding hands bow to each other like old friends discovering they were gods all along. And you, weirdly, you stand still. Because that's your role tonight. You're the witness now, not the one shaking in ecstasy, not the one sobbing in dirt. You're the one watching the miracle of others becoming. It's not any less holy. You see them, all of them, and you see the god in each face, every shiver, every grin, every drop of wine caught on someone's chin before it falls to the earth. Myrrine moves like water. She doesn't lead, she flows, she touches shoulders, presses foreheads, sings with people instead of over them. You hear her speak in a dozen languages, some real, some imagined. She weaves them like ivy through the rite. You hear your name at one point, not aloud, just beneath the song, in the pulse of the ground. She is not who she was, and neither are you. Your historical fact. After their persecution, many mystery cults, Bacchic, Orphic and otherwise, resurfaced in reformed versions. Some became private societies, others evolved into new religious movements. Over time, their symbols were absorbed into other faiths, their practices diluted or reborn. Bacchus, in particular, became more myth than deity, less a god to worship and more a figure of storytelling, inspiration and transformation. Fringe fact: in certain remote areas of southern Italy, celebrations resembling the Bacchanalia were still reported as late as the 3rd century CE. Descriptions include ecstatic dancing, ritual wine drinking, trance singing, and symbolic deaths, followed by rebirth ceremonies. Roman authorities, by then weakened, largely ignored these as folklore. But the locals knew better, and the debate, did the cult ever truly return? Some scholars argue that it never needed to. Once Rome declared war on ecstasy, the spirit of Bacchus simply stopped needing temples. He became migratory, internal, personal. Others suggest he survived only as metaphor, a symbol for freedom, for transgression, for anything that wouldn't be caged. But in this grove, he is more than metaphor, he is here. The rite ends without an ending. It just fades, like a song reaching its last breath. One by one, people sit. Some sleep, some laugh softly, curled against tree roots or each other. The fire dies down. Myrrhine finds you, sits beside you. Her hands are stained with wine and ash. She doesn't speak, just rests her head on your shoulder, and for a moment everything is quiet. Then she says, "We have to go further," you turn to her. "Further than this?" She nods. "Further than Rome." You understand what she means. The god isn't meant to be hoarded. He is movement, evolution, joy in transit. To keep him here, locked to one grove, even a sacred one, is to deny his nature. You ask where? She shrugs. Wherever they don't know his name yet. You sleep that night with firelight flickering in your dreams. The next morning the grove is empty again, intentionally this time. Each person sent off with a blessing and a piece of the chant. You hug Thaleia, who presses a small cloth into your hand. You don't look at it until you're gone. Later, when you unwrap it, you find a new mask, carved from olive wood, blank-faced, waiting for your shape. You and Myrrhine head east, through villages where no one remembers the crackdown, through fields where the air is heavy with ripening fruit, through towns where the god is still only a whisper. You don't carry his story, you become it, one rite at a time, one broken name after another, one dance into the dark. The road east is longer than you imagined, not in distance, but in transformation. Every town you pass through, every face you meet strips another layer from you. You left Rome with a cloak and a memory of a grove. Now you wear a threadbare tunic and a heart humming with the god's rhythm, and the grove is wherever your shadow falls. Myrrhine walks beside you, and between you stretches silence that speaks louder than words. You don't talk much. You don't need to. She's thinking ahead, always ahead. The villages are small. Some are barely clusters of stone huts with fields stitched into the hillsides. Others are a little more, with markets and rumours and temples to gods whose names you forgot the moment Bacchus touched your spine. At first, people stare at you both. Your strange clothes, your strange presence. But then, they don't. People have a way of accepting things that feel inevitable. And Bacchus has that effect. You arrive, and suddenly their wine tastes stronger, their sleep feels deeper, their dreams more vivid. They can't explain it, but they know something happened. You don't call it a rite anymore. It's not about ceremony, not really. You don't need ivy crowns or torchlight or chants in dead languages. You don't even need wine, though it certainly helps. Sometimes all it takes is a song sung at dusk, or a story told in the flickering light of a baker's oven, or a moment where someone laughs so hard they forget their own name. That's when you know the god is near. One evening in a tiny hamlet built into a river bend, you find a widow kneeling by a broken shrine. It's not for any particular god, just a pile of stones, wildflowers and weather-worn figures that might once have been divine. She's weeping. Myrrhine approaches her gently, kneels too. She says nothing, just listens. The woman speaks of her daughter, lost in childbirth, of her husband taken by fever, of her faith crushed under grief and the silence of the gods. And then Myrrhine takes her hand. You don't need gods who ignore you, she says. You need one who dances. The next night the widow sings, not well, not gracefully, but with something deeper than skill. The villagers gather, you pour wine, you clap, you hum. A boy plays a reed flute out of tune and out of rhythm, and somehow it's perfect. One man starts stomping his feet, and others join. No one calls it sacred. No one says the word rite. But they all know Bacchus lives in these moments. He doesn't come with a trumpet. He comes with release. Your historical fact. As the formal Bacchic cult faded from state records, it left behind a residue. Folk traditions, harvest festivals, fertility rites. In rural areas, these often blurred into local customs. Some scholars believe the lines between religion and celebration became so entangled that, by the 3rd century CE, the state simply gave up trying to separate them. Fringe fact: in one remote town in the eastern hills, a Roman traveller reported stumbling upon a group of villagers singing in a language he didn't understand, surrounding a man dressed in vines who walked like he didn't care if he was a god or a fool. The traveller fled in fear. The village never appeared on another map, and the debate: did Bacchus intend to be forgotten? Some argue that the god's essence was always meant to resist permanence, that buildings, doctrines and temples only limited him, that he was meant to vanish into story and song, so that those who needed him would have to find him not in stone but in themselves. You see this truth unfold town after town. You and Myrrine pass through like smoke, lingering just long enough to leave a memory, never long enough to draw the wrong kind of eyes. You're careful, the Empire still has spies. And while the crackdowns have quieted, the fear hasn't. You meet others like you along the way, wandering priests, exiles, scribes who once wrote the gods' hymns in secret and now carry them etched into the margins of old ledgers. In one city you find a mosaic under a wine shop, a dancing figure with ivy in his hair and a cup in each hand. The shopkeeper pretends not to notice when you stare too long. Later she leaves a note in your satchel. We remember. You start to keep a list. Not of names, that's dangerous, but of places, of moments. You call them echoes. A girl who dreams in chant and wakes speaking a language she never learned. A tavern that plays only flute music after midnight. A field where no birds sing, but people say they've heard laughter rising from the roots. It's not a map, it's a network, invisible, pulsing, alive. Myrrine begins to teach again, not in lectures but in small, sharp moments. She teaches people how to breathe like they mean it, how to sing with their whole mouth, not just their throat, how to sit with silence until it stops being punishment and becomes prayer. You find yourself doing the same. You don't realise you've become a teacher until a boy tugs your sleeve and says, "Show me how to forget," and you do. That night, by the fire, you tell the story of how you really met the god. Not the grove, not the trial, but the moment. The dizzy, awful, wonderful moment where your body said yes and your mind stopped fighting. You end the story with a toast. To those who lost their names, and the people raise their cups. To those who danced and didn't die. Someone adds, to those who did die, but didn't stay dead. The laughter that follows feels like a hymn, and in that sound, you feel something rising in your chest again. Not fear, not sorrow, purpose. The rites will never return as they once were. That era is over, but something better is growing in its place. Wilder, freer, less tied to laws and borders, something that doesn't ask permission, something that spreads like vines through stone. You don't know where the road ends, you don't need to. You're not looking for a temple anymore. You are one, and the god walks with you. You wake before the sun rises, not because of a sound or a threat, but because your body has decided it doesn't want to miss a single second of what's coming. The air is cold, sharp with dew, the kind that clings to your skin like memory. Myrrine is already up, standing barefoot on the ridge of a hill, her arms lifted to the sky, breathing like the wind belongs to her. You join her without speaking. She glances at you, then looks back at the horizon, where the first blade of sun slices through the dark. She smiles. Today, she says, we plant it. It's not a rite. Not exactly. Not like the ones in the grove or the cellar or the mountain ruins. This one is different, quieter, more permanent. A planting, not of seeds or grapes, but of meaning. You and Myrrine have been walking east for weeks, collecting stories, giving blessings, spreading fragments of the air. Godlike birds scatter crumbs. But today, you stop. You've found a place that feels right, a place that hums without a sound. A ruined villa clings to the side of a hill, half swallowed by ivy, its marble columns broken, its once grand atrium reduced to cracked stone and crumbled mosaics. Whoever built it, their name is long forgotten, but someone long ago loved wine. You see the old press, the stained clay, the troughs that once ran with fermented joy, and in the corner, tucked beneath a fig tree, a single broken statue, faceless, but unmistakably Dionysian, Thyrsus, vine crown. A grin still clinging to the curve of his chipped cheek. You decide this is the place. You clean it first. Not fully, not obsessively, just enough to make it usable. You sweep the broken tiles, patch the cracks in the roof with woven branches, light a small fire where the hearth used to be. It's not restoration, it's revival, and the god approves. By nightfall, the first travellers arrive, not by accident. Word has been spreading, faster than you realised. You hear it in the way they greet you, not with names, but with gestures. The palm turned upward, the thumb pressed to the heart, the whispered phrase non timeo lucem. I do not fear the light. They're not priests, not most of them. Just people, broken people, seeking people, a soldier with old blood in his eyes, a widow with salt in her hair, a girl who hasn't spoken since the last equinox. They sit quietly, unsure at first, but something in the air softens them. The presence is already here. It always is when you're doing it right. You don't perform the rite, not alone. Everyone plays a part. Someone lights the torch. Someone sings a tune no one knows, but everyone follows. Someone draws a spiral in the dirt. Someone weeps, and it doesn't matter why. And slowly it builds. The fire glows brighter. The chant becomes movement. The movement becomes ecstasy. But it's different now. Gentler. No frenzy. Just joy. Deep, steady joy. The kind that holds you up instead of tearing you open. You watch a man who hasn't laughed in years tip his head back and let out a sound so pure, so full, you swear the earth leans in to listen. A woman takes off her shoes and stomps in the dirt, her feet leaving prints like blessings. The girl who hasn't spoken hums, just once, but it's enough. You and Marine sit side by side, not leading, not directing, witnessing. This is what she meant. Not a rite, a seed. And this place, this crumbling, forgotten villa, becomes the first true sanctuary since the fall of the old grove. It has no name. You don't give it one. Because names are for walls and laws and letters nailed to temple doors. This place needs only a direction. East of fear, west of forgetting. And it grows. You stay for weeks, maybe months. Time bends here. People come, stay, go, return. One woman leaves and returns with 3 others. A boy who once stole food from a Roman governor's pantry now writes, poetry in the dirt with a burned stick. A healer arrives and blesses the floor with oil, saying it reminds her of a dream she had at age 9. The god, barefoot, asking her to open her palms. Your historical fact. Mystery cults often operated without fixed temples. Some of the most enduring were those that relied on movement, not permanence. Unlike the rigid temples of the state gods, Bacchic sanctuaries were often temporary, mobile, or hidden. Their power didn't come from marble. It came from the people, from the ritual itself. Fringe fact. A fragmentary letter attributed to a provincial governor's scribe describes a house near the mountains where music lives in the floor and strangers cry with joy. The letter was never officially filed. It was found decades later, scribbled on the back of a grain inventory, and the debate, was Bacchus ever meant to have temples? Some scholars argue that every time the god is placed inside walls he starts to die, that he's the god of breaking barriers, not building them, that to confine him is to domesticate him. Others say that even the god needs sanctuary, but no one agrees what that means. You begin to understand this isn't the rebirth of the Bacchanalia, it's the evolution of it. The old rites served their time. They burned brightly, wildly, gloriously, and they were stamped out. But from their ashes rises something softer, quieter, no less holy, no less ecstatic, just smarter. Because now you don't need Rome's permission. You don't even need Rome. The god lives in the story now, in the breath between verses, in the wine that's passed with a wink, not a sermon. You teach people to find him in themselves, to hold him in their hips, their laughter, their yes. And one night, as you sit beside the dying fire, Myrrhine leans close and says, "When I die, I want to be buried standing." You turn to her. "Why?" "So I can keep dancing." You don't respond. You just smile and pour her another cup. The year turns. You don't notice at first. There's no clock in this sanctuary, no official calendar nailed to the wall like in Rome's temples. Time here moves differently, by the vines ripening on the hillside, by the swelling of the stream, by the shifts in wind and the way people start singing earlier in the evening, as the days grow shorter. You've been here longer than you ever expected, maybe longer than you should, but it doesn't feel like staying. It feels like rooting. Others have come, dozens, maybe more. They arrive wordlessly, like seeds carried on wind. Some stay for a single night, some never leave. They bring nothing, they leave with less. That's the magic of it. No one comes here to take, they come to shed. One afternoon, you hear Marine's laughter echoing through the crumbling villa and pause mid-step. She's sitting on the edge of a fallen column, teaching a young child to balance a grape on her nose. The child is laughing too hard to succeed, and that's the whole point. The two of them are surrounded by others, watching, clapping, singing a little nonsense rhyme that may or may not be an old Bacchic chant, now twisted into something ridiculous. A dog howls along. A man dressed in scraps plays a lyre with 2 strings. Somewhere, someone is roasting garlic. This is what Rome feared. This right here. Not debauchery, not chaos, but freedom. Later that night, when the fire's low and the wine's nearly gone, Marine leans against you. Her voice is soft, threaded with something you don't quite recognise until it hits. Peace. "We've done what we came to do," she says. You nod. "We brought him back." She shakes her head. "He never left. We just started listening again." She's right. Of course she is. She always has been. The god didn't vanish. He just shifted. Became more patient. More subtle. More dangerous. In the best way. He stopped appearing in orgies and festivals and started appearing in moments. When someone said no without apology. When someone dared to love loudly. When someone danced in public like they didn't care who was watching. He became everywhere. Because everywhere needed him. And now here you are. Older. Wiser. Still barefoot. Still humming. You think about Rome sometimes. Not with longing, but with a strange kind of pity. It still tells stories about you. You've heard them. Passed along by travellers, whispered in markets, carved into the backs of benches. They say the cult returned, that it infects the countryside, that it moves through laughter, like plague, that its priests are invisible, that one of them is a woman who can summon the dead with a glance, another, a man who never sleeps, who drinks the sins of strangers. You smirk. Almost wish you were that dramatic, but the truth is much simpler. You just listen. You just hold the space. You just say yes. Your historical fact. Despite suppression efforts, the legacy of Bacchic rites lingered long after the edict banning them. Some rituals adapted, blending with local traditions. Others remained hidden, passed through families like heirlooms. By the 4th century CE, Christian theologians were still preaching against drunken chants and ecstatic dances in the countryside. A clear sign that the rites had not died, only evolved. Fringe fact. In one rural grave, archaeologists found an inscription reading "He gave me back my name." The grave contained no official records, no indication of citizenship, just a vine-wrapped cup and the bones of someone who died smiling. And the debate. Is it rebellion, or is it rebirth? Historians still argue over the legacy of the Bacchanalia. Was it a revolution in spirit? An ancient protest against order, hierarchy and state control? Or was it simply a return to something humans always needed and never stopped chasing? The chance to be fully themselves, even if just for one night. You stop calling it a cult. You stop calling it anything. Names belong to Rome. What you've built doesn't need one. It exists in whispers, gestures, shared looks. It lives in the girl who draws spirals in the dirt, in the boy who sings lullabies to the vines, in the woman who lets herself cry in public and isn't shamed for it, in the old man who strips naked at midnight just to remember how it feels. You start writing things down, not for records, not for future believers, but for memory, for you, a scrap of poetry, a chant half remembered, a story about the god turning into a fox and stealing a senator's sandals. They're silly, profound, sacred, useless, beautiful, like the rites themselves. And when people ask you, "What is this place?" you tell them, "It's where forgetting ends." The sanctuary becomes a myth. Then, eventually, a legend. Travellers claim they stumbled upon it after being lost for days, guided by laughter or birdsong or a dream of someone pouring wine into a river. No two stories agree on where it is. Some say it's east of the old road. Some say it moves. The truth? It does move. Because eventually you and Mirren leave. Not because you're chased, but because you have to. The god won't let you sit still. He's not done with you yet. You don't announce your departure. You just fade. You leave the sanctuary in the hands of those ready to hold it. You walk into the hills, One step, then another, and somewhere, on the 4th day or the 5th, or maybe the 1st again, you hear it. The drum beat. Far off. Impossible. Perfect. You turn to Myrrhine. She's already grinning. You start walking faster, because the god is calling again. And you're still listening.